Chapter 2367. Have you made up your minds? Jinshin arrived before the 8 protectors and glanced past them as he asked calmly. The 8 radiant divine king looked at each other and seemed rather dispirited. They said, "We've already made up our minds. We all believe that we should run as far away as possible. The world of moon and star is so large that even Elder He Tion's soul can only envelop a small portion of it. No matter how powerful Aoyama is, he's only a divine king. We don't believe that he can scour the entire world of moon and star in just a year. We only need to stay here for a year. A year later, when the world of moon and star opens again, the Sacred Hall will definitely send powerful elders to search the entire world of moon and star. Those elders will definitely find us. This might be our only chance at survival. If that's the case, let's move quickly," said Jinshin. This time, he did not say anything. If Elder He Tion was still present, the Radiant Divine King would still have the ability to contend against Aoyama. However, Elder He Tion was dead now. Even if all the protectors of the 5 groups worked together, they would not be Aoyama's opponent. They had already lost their only chance at contending against Aoyama. Running far away and hiding was indeed the only option for the Radiant Divine King. Afterwards, everyone continued on their way. Jinshin and Donglin Yinshui moved slowly due to their weaker strength. As a result, they were enveloped by a layer of light from the protectors, allowing them to travel with them. Because of that, the speed at which they were traveling was greatly increased. Donglin Yinshui had already given up on the mission of collecting Radiant Origin Pearls. Aoyama's arrival had completely disrupted their mission. At the same time, the 4 groups led by Gongzhang Xen Bin, and Shurda made the same decision as Donglin Yinshui in the world of Moon and Star. The 4 teams split up and fled in 4 different directions. Aoyama's name was definitely a terrifying nightmare in the eyes of all the divine kings of the Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, when they learned that Aoyama had also entered the world of Moon and Star, the divine kings of Radiant Saint Hall became utterly terrified. The only thought left in their heads was to flee far away and avoid Aoyama's search. None of them dared to think about fighting against Aoyama. Elder He Tion has a way to communicate with the outside world. Something so big has happened in the world of Moon and Star. I'm sure Elder He Tion has already reported it to the Sacred Hall in the outside world. All we need to do is carefully hide. The Sacred Hall will naturally send experts to kill Aoyama. A middle-aged divine king of Radiant Saint Hall who belonged to Shurda's group said. Although he said that, his face was still filled with great unease. When Elder He Tion fought with Aoyama, all of them chose to flee as quickly as possible. They did not dare to approach him at all. As a result, apart from Jinshin, no one in the world of Moon and Star knew that Elder He Tion was already dead. Elder He Tion did indeed possess a way to communicate with the outside world, but as the world of Moon and Star was of high grade, the boundaries were extremely tough. He needed to activate the formation cast down in order to communicate with the outside world. However, Elder He Tion did not have the time to activate the formation when he was fighting Aoyama. As a result, the news that happened in the world of Moon and Star after Elder He Tion's death did not spread to the outside world like all the Radiant God Kings had hoped. The outside world had no idea what had happened in the world of Moon and Star at all. The 9 Divine King of Radiant Saint Hall frantically fled with Shurda. All of them pushed their speed to the limit. However, at this moment, a powerful presence suddenly appeared in the distance. It approached their group at an extremely terrifying speed. Sensing the presence, the 9 Divine King of Radiant Saint Hall all paled. They all cried out in fear. It's not Elder He Tion. It's Aoyama. Oh no. Aoyama has caught up. Why don't I see Elder He Tion? Has Elder He Tion already been defeated? Run, run. The 9 protectors of Shurda all paled. The group of 10 that had originally gathered together fell into chaos at this moment. 4 of them broke away from the group and fled in 4 different directions in panic. The actions of the 4 people were like a fuse, causing the other protectors to abandon Shurda and flee in all directions. In their opinion, they might have a better chance of survival if they did that. Shurda was a short little fatty. He looked to be only 17 or 18 years old, but in reality, he had already cultivated for several hundred years. When he saw his 9 protectors leave one after another, his chubby round face instantly turned extremely ugly. In the distance, Aoyama gradually appeared. He radiated with a surging presence as he strolled through the air, directly making his way over. He seemed like he was taking a leisurely stroll, but he crossed 1,000 kilometers with each step. He arrived before Shurda in a single instance. "Which one of 5 candidates are you?" Aoyama hovered in the air as he stared at Shurda coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. I'm sure." Shurda's chubby face was filled with fear as he stammered out. "Shurda? Very good. You could die now." Killing intent flashed through Aoyama's eyes as he extended a finger towards Shurda's forehead. Spurt! A finger-sized, bloody hole immediately appeared between Shurda's eyebrows as he collapsed powerlessly. Shurda, one of the 5 candidates, had died in an instant. However, Aoyama acted like he had just done something insignificant. He looked in the direction that the 9 Divine King of Light had fled in. He sneered. "Do you think you can escape just like that? You underestimate me, Aoyama, far too much. This time, no matter how far you flee or how well hidden you are, all the hallowed Saint Masters who have entered the world of Moon and Star will die in the end. This time, I, Aoyama, will make it so that the Radiant Saint Hall has no chosen saint." With that, Aoyama pursued the 9 Divine King of Light who had scattered. Before long, Aoyama caught up to the 9 Divine King of Light who were responsible for protecting Shurda. Without any exception, all of them were mercilessly slain by Aoyama. Before Aoyama, who could rival the Primordial Realm or even kill Primordial Realm experts, the Radiant Divine King of Light, who only had mid-7-colored soul cores, were unable to put up any resistance at all. After slaughtering Shurda's group, Aoyama stood where he was and closed his eyes. He used a secret technique to sense the surroundings silently. A few seconds later, Aoyama opened his eyes. He looked to the left and smiled coldly. "I found the second group." With that, Aoyama turned into a blur and shot off with lightning-like speed towards the second group. The second group he had found happened to be the group led by Donglin Yin Shui. When Aoyama pursued Shurda's group, he had unintentionally closed the distance between him and Donglin Yin Shui's group. As a result, not only did Donglin Yin Shui's group fail to distance themselves from Aoyama, but they instead became one of the 4 remaining groups. Chapter 2368. Jinshin's face suddenly changed as he hurried along with the protectors. As Aoyama chased after them, he did not try to hide himself at all. Instead, he gave off a surging presence that was extremely eye-catching, allowing Jinshin to sense his location from very far away. At this moment, Jinshin could sense that Aoyama was heading in their direction. He moved extremely quickly. Even though the 8 Radiant God Kings beside him traveled as quickly as they could, they were still far too slow compared to Qing Shan. "We're in trouble now." Jinshin's face finally became rather ugly. He did not fear Aoyama, but he could not reveal his strength right now. Jinshin's face sank. The light in his eyes flickered as he struggled to come up with a plan. "Oh no, Aoyama has caught up." Before long, Aoyama entered the range of the Divine King's senses as well. The surging presence he gave off that was different from Elder He-Tion's immediately allowed the Divine King to determine his identity. Their faces all changed drastically. "He's caught up. He's caught up. Run, run." The 8 Divine Kings' faces became extremely pale as they cried out in fear. The shadow of death enveloped them as great fear filled their hearts. They could no longer care about their mission of protecting the candidates. As a result, the 8 Radiant God Kings acted like Shurda's 9 protectors, abandoning Donglin Yinshui and Jinshin and fleeing in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the 8 protectors around Donglin, Yinshui, and Jinshin completely vanished, leaving behind only Jinshin and Donglin Yinshui. Donglin Yinshui's complexion became extremely horrible. Her delicate face paled as she stared at the 8 protectors who had vanished. She felt helpless inside. Jianchen also watched the 8 protectors flee by themselves with an ugly expression. Afterward, he arrived before Donglin Yinshui and said sternly, "We can't stay here. Let's go." He could already sense that Aoyama was getting closer and closer to them. Aoyama's target should be me. He should be coming for us 5 candidates. Changyang, don't worry about me. Go. Donglin Yinshui was sorrowful. Her eyes were filled with despair. She did not hold any hopes of surviving against Aoyama, who could even kill primordial realm experts. Let's go. Jinshin frowned. Afterwards, he called out and grabbed Donglin Yinshui's hand without saying anything else, shooting towards the dense forest in the distance. Everyone who entered the world of Moon and Star could die, but nothing could happen to Donglin Yinshui, as she was directly related to whether he could enter the Tower of Radiance or not. Donglin Yinshui's hand was warm and smooth, but Jinshin did not care about that at all. He held Donglin Yinshui's soft hand tightly and shot off into the distance. When Donglin Yinshui sensed that Jinshin had already grabbed her hand, she could not help but tremble slightly. Her heart immediately churned. Although she had been cultivating for a long time, she had never had such intimate physical contact with any man since she was young. Donglin Yinshui glanced at Jinshin to the side slightly. When she discovered that Jinshin was completely focused on fleeing and did not take advantage of her at all, she gradually calmed down. At the very least, he didn't flee alone like the other protectors, thought Donglin Yin. Donglin Yinshui thought. Her opinion of Jinshin could not help but change slightly. She did not reject Jinshin's action of holding her hand. Suddenly, Jinshin, who was fleeing with Donglin Yinshui's hand, stopped with an ugly expression. He said sternly, "As expected, Qingshan really is coming for us." At this moment, even Donglin Yinshui could sense Aoyama's presence. He did not chase after the 8 protectors. Instead, he directly made his way towards her. His target is me. Run before he gets here. Get as far away as you can. Donglin Yinshui broke free from Jinshin's hand and said gloomily, "Ha! If you want to escape from me, Aoyama, with your strength, then you're underestimating me, Aoyama." With that, Aoyama's laughter rang out. A black speck, even smaller than an ant, appeared in the distant horizon. However, in the next moment, the black speck crossed a huge distance and appeared before Donglin Yinshui and Jinshin. It turned into Aoyama. Jinshin studied Aoyama. He had heard about Aoyama long ago. He was known as the strongest divine king in the saints' world. Moreover, Aoyama was an existence who cultivated both radiant saint force and martial soul force like him. Jinshin seemed composed before Aoyama, but Donglin Yinshui was in despair. 4-colored primal core cultivation. You should be one of the candidates, right? Tell me your name. Aoyama hovered 3 meters above the ground with his hands behind his back. He looked down at Donglin Yinshui and spoke coldly. Donglin Yinshui did not reply. She gritted her teeth and took out a formation disc from her space ring, throwing it to the ground. Immediately, a powerful barrier of energy rose up, enveloping her and Jinshin in a semicircle. This was a defensive formation disc. It was of a high grade and could easily block attacks from Divine King experts. It could even block an attack from a primordial realm expert once. The seniors of the Donglin clan had given it to Donglin Yinshui before she entered the world of Moon and Star. It was her greatest life-saving trump card. Jinshin studied the formation disc and immediately determined that it could only block a single attack from Aoyama. It's fine if you don't want to say it. You should be Donglin Yinshui as the only woman among the 5 candidates, right? Aoyama looked at what Donglin Yinshui did indifferently. He did not stop her. In the next moment, killing intent flashed through his eyes, and he said coldly, "Since I know who you are, you can follow in Shirta's footsteps." With that, Aoyama extended a finger towards Donglin Yinshui. Immediately, a powerful streak of energy shot out from Aoyama's fingertip. It struck Donglin Yinshui's barrier with terrifying power that caused space to tremble. Martial soul force. A gleam of light flashed through Jinshin's eyes the moment Aoyama struck out. At that moment, he could clearly sense the existence of martial soul force. Moreover, It was martial soul force that was countless times more powerful than the martial soul force he possessed. Jianchen immediately became eager. At that moment, he suddenly desired a battle with Aoyama very much. He wanted to understand the mysteries of martial soul force from Aoyama. Bang! Chapter 2369. Even though the energy had been weakened by the formation, making it extremely weak, it was still extremely terrifying to Donglin Yin Shui, who was only a deity. Blood sprayed from Donglin Yin Shui's mouth as she immediately became sheet white. She was heavily injured. At the same time, her soul was affected by the martial soul force. Extremely weak strands of martial soul force wormed their way into her soul and heavily injured it. Donglin Yin Shui only felt an extremely intense pain in her head. In the next moment, she lost consciousness and fainted. She's actually still alive. Aoyama was cold. He had already extended his finger a second time. It also turned into a powerful streak of energy, shooting towards Donglin Yin Shui with terrifying power that could distort space. Jianchen had been paying attention to Donglin Yin Shui's situation at all times. The moment Donglin Yin Shui collapsed, he grabbed her by the shoulders. His eyes immediately lit up when he saw that Donglin Yin Shui had already fainted. At the same time, space distorted slightly as a powerful pulse of energy attacked from up ahead. Aoyama had extended his finger a second time, shooting over with lightning speed. Jianchen did not even glance at Aoyama's second attack. He wrapped an arm around Donglin Yin Shui's shoulders and turned around, facing Aoyama with his back. He protected Donglin Yin Shui with his chest as he extended his right hand behind him as well. Immediately, sharp laws of the sword descended, gathering at the tip of Jianchen's finger in a single instance. It suddenly shot out as a dazzling strand of sword chi. This sword aura appeared to be only the size of a finger. However, it was incomparably powerful. When the sword aura broke through the air, it emitted waves of sharp, whistling sounds, causing the surrounding space to distort intensely. Faintly, it appeared as though many cracks were being formed in the void. With Donglin Yin Shui unconscious and the radiant divine king fleeing in all directions, Jianchen finally found an opportunity to strike. The sharp sword chi collided with the streak of energy with martial soul force, erupting with a great boom. The two completely different laws both shattered after the collision, causing powerful ripples of energy to wreak havoc in all directions. Their attacks were terrifying and powerful. They had completely surpassed the level of Divine King, causing the ground to crack and space to distort. Even the space there had almost shattered. Jianchen used his body to protect the unconscious Donglin Yin Shui. As he circulated his chaotic force, he pushed its defenses to the limit. His feet seemed to be rooted to the ground, allowing him to remain where he was under the violent ripples of energy. He was as immovable as a mountain. On the other side, the azure-robed Qing Shan hovered in the air. There seemed to be a formless energy in front of him, making the incoming shockwaves unable to get close to him at all. At this moment, his eyes shone with scorching light. He stared at Jianchen with shock, surprise, and disbelief. He could not help but cry out the laws of the sword. Aoyama had discovered Jianchen from very far away with the senses of his soul. However, Jianchen only had a one-colored soul core back then, so Aoyama did not take him seriously at all. But now, Jianchen, who was clearly a radiant saint master in Aoyama's eyes, had suddenly displayed the power of the laws of the sword. This finally made Aoyama pay attention to Jianchen. Aoyama's eyes shone brightly as he stared at Jianchen. His gaze changed rapidly. Jianchen slowly returned to his senses as well. He stared at Aoyama calmly. But very soon, a sliver of surprise flashed through his heart. He found Aoyama's gaze to be rather strange. It was mixed with some confusion. He did not sense any killing intent from Aoyama's gaze. Instead, he saw a sliver of joy and excitement from Aoyama's rapidly changing gaze. The senses of the soul earlier came from you, Aoyama asked after looking at Jianchen for a while. That's right. Jianchen did not deny it. He stared at Aoyama calmly and asked, You want to kill Donglin Yin Shui? I've come to the world of Moon and Star to kill the 5 candidates of the Radiant Saint Hall and all their protectors, so that the Radiant Saint Hall no longer has a chosen saint." Aoyama had already recovered his composure. He stared at Jianshan deeply as he said firmly, "Then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed because you can't kill Donglin Yen Shui," Jianshan said calmly. Aoyama frowned when he heard that. He stared at Jianshan sharply and growled, "You want to protect her? You're not weak, but you're still not at the primordial realm. Do you think you have the ability?" "I do." "All right, then let me see just how capable you are." Aoyama called out. His presence skyrocketed, surging into the sky. It caused the clouds to churn and the space there to distort. Jinshin's gaze gradually sharpened as well. He lowered his head and glanced at the unconscious Donglin Yen Shui, who was bleeding from the corner of her mouth. With a thought, the laws of space revolved around her in a single instance, wrapping around Donglin Yen Shui and vanishing. "The laws of space," Aoyama called out. A strange light flashed through Jinshin's eyes. He could clearly sense that Jinshin had already sent Yen Shui to the center of a mountain several hundred kilometers away with the laws of space. The center of the mountain was originally the territory of a pangolin. It was an early overgod, but when Donglin Yen Shui was sent there by the laws of space, the pangolin had been slashed apart by a spatial blade that had suddenly appeared. After sending Yen Shui to safety, Jinshin struck out decisively, launching an attack at Aoyama. At that moment, a supreme sword intent radiated from his body. It seemed to be endless as it gathered from all directions. Jinshin seemed to have become a supreme sword that had been stabbed into the ground. Then, his body began to shine with blinding light. With a powerful sword intent that caused the space to tremble, he stabbed towards Qingshan. This was the first time Jinshin had truly struck out after his soul had fused with chaotic force. As soon as he struck out, the might was enough to shake the surroundings. When the sword chi shot out, it ripped through space, forming black cracks of various sizes. The cold sword chi reduced the surrounding vegetation to dust and reduced the rocks to dust. Even the ground beneath his feet was shaved off layer by layer by layer from the sword chi, causing it to sink in. Although Jinshin's comprehension of the laws of the sword had not broken through, remaining at the great perfection of sword spirit, his battle prowess had increased by far too much compared to before. Moreover, Jinshin could clearly sense that not only had his usage of Radiant Saint Force become easier after his soul had changed, but his grasp over the laws of the sword had increased as well. As a result, his affinity with the laws of the sword had reached an extremely great level. Aoyama became stern. He bellowed out as terrifying energy surged through his body, gathering in his right hand. He formed a sword with his right hand and swung it down with extremely dense martial soul force. Chapter 2370. A gleam of light flashed through Jinshin's eyes. The moment Aoyama struck out, he immediately felt a powerful strand of martial soul force shoot out. It tore through his protective light like a hot knife through butter and collided with his soul. The martial soul force specialized in attacking the soul. It was a power completely different from origin energy, so it was impossible to defend against. Even with Jinshin's abilities, he was unable to find a way to block it. However, Jinshin was no ordinary cultivator either. Ignoring the fact that he had fused with a strand of chaotic force, his soul had undergone an unbelievable change. He was also an existence who could use martial soul force. As a result, when the presence of martial soul force tore through Jinshin's defenses and came in contact with his soul, Jinshin did not feel any discomfort at all. The effects of Aoyama's martial soul force on Jinshin had been reduced to a minimum. He was basically immune to it. Boom! At the same time, Jinshin turned into a sword and collided with Aoyama's finger with resplendent light, erupting with a great boom. Immediately, an even more powerful strand of martial soul force suddenly arrived. Like a huge python, it ignored all of Jinshin's defenses and struck Jinshin's soul. This strand of martial soul force was much more powerful than before. Even the souls of primordial realm experts would be severely affected by it. However, Jianshun remained the same as before. He was not affected at all. The threat that martial soul force posed to him was not as terrifying as other cultivators. However, Aoyama's attack was not just martial soul force. His finger also possessed devastating power. When the power came in contact with Jianshun's sword chi, it immediately shattered the sword chi, turning it into scattered sword chi that shot off in all directions like rain. Aoyama's finger, on the other hand, carried the remaining power and did not slow down in the slightest as it pierced towards Jianshun's chest. Jianshun's eyes narrowed. The power of Aoyama's finger was much stronger than he had imagined. However, he was not flustered at all. He calmly dealt with it. He pointed his finger at the sky, and immediately his entire aura changed. At this moment, he seemed to have become one with the heavens and the earth, transforming into the great Tao of the heavens and the earth, becoming a supreme existence that controlled the heavens and the earth. The sword chi that had already collapsed in the void and shot out like raindrops in all directions paused at this moment. It was as if they had been summoned by something. They gathered towards Jianshun at an even faster speed. In an instant, a resplendent sword light was formed above Jianshun's head. It tore through the void and mercilessly slashed towards Aoyama's finger. At this moment, Jianshun was completely using his control over the laws of the sword. Now that his strength had reached such a level, the various sword techniques he had grasped in the past were completely useless due to their grade. "You're even more powerful than I imagined," Aoyama called out. The trajectory of the finger that originally stabbed towards Jianshun's chest suddenly changed. He used two of his fingers as a sword to catch Jianshun's sword chi. He smiled strangely. "Martial soul technique, strip." With that, a wondrous strand of martial soul force immediately shot out from Aoyama's forehead. It turned into an invisible blade that landed on Jianshun's sword chi. Jianshun's face suddenly changed. He was shocked. At that moment, he suddenly discovered that his connection with the sword chi had been severed. The strand of sword chi condensed from his laws of the sword was no longer under his control. Aoyama had stripped it of his control. Martial soul force actually has such a wondrous use. Jianshun was surprised. At this moment, the strand of sword chi condensed by Jianshun stabbed towards Jianshun under Aoyama's control. That was not all. Aoyama clenched his right hand into a fist, and terrifying energy surged from it. He punched out, smashing towards Jianshun right after the sword chi. Jianshun showed no fear. He circulated chaotic force, and the laws of strength descended. He also punched out with unimaginable force. The power of his punch had reached the limit. The space before him shattered like a mirror the moment he struck out. The origin energy in the surroundings collapsed from the punch. The moment the sword chi that Aoyama had stripped away came in contact with Jianshun's fist, it began to disperse inch by inch from the tip of the sword. Afterwards, Jianshun's fist did not slow down at all. It collided with Aoyama's fist with a terrifying force. Bang! A heavy boom rang out in the surroundings. The collision between the two of them, this time, was extremely terrifying. It formed a dazzling shockwave that expanded in all directions from the two of them. Wherever it passed by, everything vanished. All the mountains within a radius of 100 kilometers were reduced to ashes, and the ground caved in. Aoyama was blown away by Jianshun's punch. He flew several kilometers in the air before finally coming to a halt. His vital energy surged, and he almost lost all feeling in his right arm. He immediately stared at Jianshun in surprise and called out, "The laws of strength. You've actually grasped the laws of the sword, space, and strength at the same time, and you've reached the level of the Divine King in all three of them. No, even the laws of strength can't increase your strength to such a terrifying level. It's your body. Your body possesses extraordinary strength in the first place." Jianshun said nothing. The space around him pulsed gently, and he vanished in a single moment. He used the laws of space to perform a short-distance teleportation, appearing behind Aoyama in the blink of an eye. He brought his hands together, and an even more powerful strand of sword chi suddenly appeared between his hands. It stabbed towards Aoyama's back with the power to rip through space. Aoyama shivered inside. The strand of sword chi was so powerful that he dared not to underestimate it. Before the sword chi had even approached him, he felt like countless strands of sword chi had drifted around him, forming a dense encirclement around him. He felt piercing pain all over his body. Even the cyan gown he wore was riddled with sword scars. At that moment, he felt like he had entered a domain of the sword. Invisible strands of sword chi were everywhere. Soul Mountain Seal, Aoyama bellowed out. He formed a seal with his hands, and an illusionary mountain appeared above his head. It was hazy, as if it was shrouded in mist. It was impossible to see clearly. However, on this mountain, there was a terrifying power that could suppress heaven and earth. The illusionary mountain rapidly descended. Its might was vast and soul-stirring, causing the space below to suddenly freeze. It crushed down towards Jianshan like a hot knife through butter. Jianshan's body sank. At that moment, he felt like a mysterious power had enveloped him, forming an unbreakable restraint. He was unable to dodge the pressure of the illusionary mountain at all. He could only endure it forcefully. Jianshan became stern. The sword chi that had stabbed towards Aoyama's back suddenly shot toward the sky. It turned into a bolt of lightning and collided with the illusionary mountain. At the same time, he condensed the laws of strength around him. He used his greatest strength to punch the sky. Bang! 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 Chapter 2371. Afterwards, Jianshan transformed into a sword. He shone with surging light as he stabbed out like a sword. At the same time, he used the laws of strength and the laws of space at the same time, controlling the power of the three laws in battle. Sword light soared into the sky outside, blooming with light that illuminated the world. Inside, he was supported by the laws of strength, making his physical strength terrifyingly strong. The laws of space increased his speed to the limit, making the power of his attack extremely shocking. He was not at the primordial realm, but the power in his strike was enough to kill primordial realm experts. Haha, nice. Aoyama showed no fear in the face of Jianshan's shocking strike. As he laughed aloud, his presence suddenly skyrocketed, and he struck out with his full strength as well. He used a secret technique and struck out with a shocking strike, causing the sky to collapse. The battle between the two of them was extremely intense. Every time they collided, every time they clashed, a deafening boom would erupt. Terrifying and violent storms of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, creating cracks in space one after another. They fought from the ground to the sky, and then from the sky to the depths of the earth. They fought as they retreated, fighting several tens of thousand kilometers away. Along the way, all the plants had been reduced to dust. Mountains collapsed one after another, vanishing one after another. They had been reduced to dust by the powerful shock waves of energy, filling the air with dust. On the ground, streaks of fiery red lava spewed out from the depths of the ground into the sky with a high temperature, illuminating the entire sky red. The attacks from Jianshan and Qingshan missed from time to time, striking the ground below and piercing several thousand kilometers into the very depths of the earth. As a result, the magma buried deep underground was no longer as calm as before. Both Jianshan and Aoyama were quite injured now that the battle had reached such a state. Their clothes were dyed with blood. Aoyama was enveloped by a milky white light. This was Radiant Saint Force. Under the envelopment of Radiant Saint Force, his wounds healed at a visible rate. He healed as he fought. Even though Jianshan did not use Radiant Saint Force to heal, the powerful regeneration of his chaotic force was fully unleashed. As a result, his rate of recovery was no slower than Aoyama's. As the two of them engaged in an intense battle, the three groups led by Jianshan, Xian Bing, and as well as the protectors who had abandoned Donglin, Yin Shui, and Jianshan all stopped. They raised their heads and stared in the direction of the battle between Jianshan and Aoyama from afar. The light in their eyes flickered. What's going on? Why have you all stopped? The candidate, Jianshan, called out to the protectors beside him. His face was filled with undisguised anxiety, as well as some fear. This was fear towards Aoyama. Young Master Exion, they're experts fighting in the distance. The shockwaves from the battle are extremely terrifying, causing the surroundings to change. Even from millions of kilometers away, we can sense it clearly. A protector beside Jianshin said in fright. One of them should be Aoyama of the martial soul lineage. But who's the other person? It doesn't matter who he is, but we can be certain that he's even more powerful than Elder Hition. The disturbance from his battle with Aoyama is even greater than Elder Hition's. Has the Sacred Hall received the news and sent experts over? The light in their eyes flickered, and they looked at one another. Afterwards, one of them suggested, since Aoyama has already been kept busy, there's no need for us to be afraid. Let's go. Let's go see who's fighting against Aoyama. Afterwards, a few of the protectors immediately flew towards where Jianshin and Aoyama were fighting. The remaining people remained behind to protect Jianshin. When they moved, Anda's group made the same arrangements. Only Exion Bin's group did not send any protectors to investigate under the insistence of the candidate. Instead, they continued to flee into the distance. The protectors who had abandoned Yin Shui all turned around without any exception, approaching the battlefield in the distance. The shockwaves from the battle are so intense. Aoyama must have encountered an opponent even more powerful than Elder Hition. The Sacred Hall must have learned about the situation in the world of Moon and Star and sent experts to deal with Aoyama. Aoyama can't even take care of himself right now. Let's hurry over and see if we can find an opportunity to kill Aoyama. Killing Aoyama of the martial soul lineage will be a great merit. The protectors all had their own thoughts. They no longer fled. Instead, they approached Aoyama proactively through the shockwaves from the battle. Boom! 10 million kilometers away, Jianshin and Aoyama were both blown away by the powerful recoil after their clash. When Aoyama stabilized himself, a black sword suddenly appeared in his hand with a flip of his hand. It gave off the might of a god artifact, and he called out, "Soul-slaying sword, low-quality god artifact." Even the elder of the Sacred Hall who just died at my hands did not have the right to make me use this sword. You, on the other hand, have the right to make me use this sword. I hope you don't disappoint me. With that, Aoyama swung his sword, sending out a pitch-black streak of sword chi towards Jianshin. After using the god artifact, Aoyama's battle prowess reached a whole new level once again. With a swing of his sword, a pitch-black crack several meters long appeared in space. Jianshin was stern. At this moment, he no longer held back. With a flip of his hand, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways suddenly appeared. As he poured in his chaotic force, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways immediately shone with resplendent starlight. Illusionary stars appeared one after another. Every time a star was condensed, the power of the 9-star sword of heavenly ways would increase. A total of 6 illusionary stars shone from the 9-star sword of heavenly ways one after another. Jianshin also swung his sword. Immediately, starlight filled the sky. It seemed like endless starlight had descended, colliding with the soul-slaying sword loudly. The clash between the two god artifacts was even more shocking. When the terrifying energy collided, a deafening boom rang out. The space where the two god artifacts collided collapsed, forming a black hole that was a meter wide. The powerful recoil and shockwave wreaked havoc, forcing Jianshin and Aoyama to stagger backwards. Aoyama's face was pale. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, but he stared at Jianshin with shining eyes. He laughed aloud. The 9-star sword of heavenly ways. It really is you. Before him, Jianshin was emotionless. His eyes were cold. He knew that Aoyama had already discovered his true identity, but he was not surprised. When he made up his mind to protect Donglin Yin Shui, he had already prepared himself for the consequences of having his identity exposed. The 9-star sword of heavenly ways in Jianshin's hand suddenly trembled. It shone with resplendent starlight as he glared at Aoyama. Just when he was about to continue fighting Aoyama, he suddenly frowned. He glanced around, and his gaze seemed to pierce through the obstructions of space, allowing him to see what was happening extremely far away. He had already sensed that quite a few Divine King of Light were rapidly approaching him from 4 different directions. Even though they were still several million kilometers away, they would arrive before long with their speed as Divine Kings. As a matter of fact, their souls could even envelop this place with ease. However, the space there was filled with extremely violent storms of energy, preventing the senses of their souls from approaching. The approach of these people made Jinshan give up on continuing his battle with Aoyama. He stowed the 9-star sword of heavenly ways away and said coldly, "Aoyama, I'll fight you another day." With that, the power of the laws of space immediately pulsed where Jinshan was. In the next moment, he vanished. He had left. Jinshan used the laws of space to teleport 1,000 kilometers away. Afterwards, with a few flashes, he arrived 10,000 kilometers away as quickly as he could. He picked up the unconscious Donglin Yin Shui and flew off into the distance. Aoyama hovered in the air with the soul-slaying sword in his hand. He did not stop Jinshan from leaving. His eyes were extremely bright as he watched Jinshan fly off into the distance with a strange light. He smiled and said, "I've actually encountered the 8th Martial Soul Force expert here. However, his battle prowess is so great that it even surprises me." What a surprise. It's just a pity that he doesn't know how to use Martial Soul Force at all. Chapter 2372. With that, Aoyama turned into an azure blur and shot through the air. He shot towards the Divine King, who approached from the surroundings with lightning-like speed. He did not seem to be worried about disturbing the Divine King at all. As he flew through the air, he gave off a powerful presence that blanketed the surroundings. In the distance, the protectors of the 4 candidates approached the battlefield with lightning speed from 4 different directions. The shockwaves from the battle between Jinshan and Aoyama were just too powerful. They had completely surpassed the Divine King's level of cultivation. As a result, the scattered Divine King all believed that the Sacred Hall had sent experts to deal with Aoyama. After all, they had already learned from the elders that the Sacred Hall had already dealt with the vicious beasts in the world of Moon and Star before they had come. Among the vicious beasts that remained, the strongest were only Divine Kings. It was impossible for existences that surpassed the Divine King's level of cultivation to appear. As a result, they immediately connected the shockwaves from the battle between the Primordial Realm experts to the Sacred Hall's reinforcements. I wonder which elder has entered the world of Moon and Star. But no matter who it is, Aoyama is done for. Since the Sacred Hall already knows that Aoyama is here, the elder that has come to reinforce him definitely has the ability to kill Aoyama. There's already an elder from the Sacred Hall here. Aoyama is done for anyway. If that's the case, I have to put on a good performance before this elder. If I can be of any use, it'll be a great merit. I'll be able to earn a tremendous amount of merit. The light in the eyes of the Divine King who rushed towards the battlefield flickered as they all had their own thoughts. But very soon, one of the groups suddenly came to a halt. They stared straight ahead as surprise and doubt filled their faces. They had already sensed that a terrifying aura, so powerful that it made them tremble in fear, was approaching them at an extraordinary speed. Moreover, what made them feel even more shocked and uneasy was that they were familiar with the owner of the presence. It was Aoyama's presence. Oh no, Aoyama is heading towards us. We're the elder that fought Aoyama. Why can't I sense his presence anymore? The elder's presence has vanished. Oh no, run. Run. The faces of the radiant god kings paled in shock as they fled in the opposite direction as quickly as they could in fright. Behind them, Aoyama's eyes were cold. He sneered as he pursued them. He moved extremely quickly, crossing 1,000 kilometers in a single instance. He completely surpassed the Divine King who had erupted with their greatest speed. Very soon, he caught up to the first Divine King. He struck out decisively and mercilessly, wiping out a mid-Divine King's soul with a single strike. Afterwards, he did not stop at all. He continued in pursuit of the remaining Divine Kings. At the same time, The calm space in a mountain forest several million kilometers away suddenly rippled like water. Jianchun silently appeared there with the unconscious Donglin Yin Shui in his arms. After several short-distance teleportations, Jianchun had already traveled far away from where he fought Qing Shan. He held Donglin Yin Shui in his arms as he stared into the distance, as if he was looking at Qing Shan from afar. The light in his eyes flickered, and after a slight hesitation, he did not stay any longer. He continued off into the distance. At this moment, a pain moan rang out from Jianchun's arms. Donglin Yin Shui had already woken up slowly. She opened her eyes weakly and saw Jianchun's face with a single glance. Her eyes immediately became slightly dazed. Jianchun immediately slowed down, maintaining the speed of a radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core. He crossed the mountains and ran across the ground with Donglin Yin Shui in his arms. He said, "You're awake?" Donglin Yin Shui recovered very quickly. She immediately sensed that she was in Jianchun's arms, which immediately made her blush. A smear of embarrassment appeared in her eyes. However, in the next moment, her mind suddenly shuddered. She stared around with her bright eyes and asked nervously, "Where's Aoyama? He didn't kill us? How did we escape?" Jianchun chuckled when he heard that. "We were lucky. Just when Aoyama was about to kill us, a vicious beast suddenly appeared. The vicious beast seemed to have grievances with Aoyama, so it engaged in a great battle with Aoyama. I fled with you in my arms during the chaos, so we managed to survive." Donglin Yin Shui firmly believed Jianchun's explanation. She said in joy, "The vicious beast's strength should have reached the peak of the Divine King, or it would have been impossible for it to be Aoyama's opponent. How close! If it weren't for the vicious beast that suddenly appeared, we probably wouldn't have survived until now." With that, Donglin Yin Shui suddenly realized that she was still in Jianchun's arms. She immediately blushed and said softly, "Changyang, let me down." Jianchun paused. He lowered his head and looked at Donglin Yin Shui. He said sternly, "You're very heavily injured. You probably can't travel alone. Are you sure you won't let me down?" Donglin Yin Shui was actually afraid to look into Jianchun's eyes when she was stared at by Jianchun. She nodded with a red face. "All right, but you need to know that Aoyama isn't too far away from us right now. We can't stay here any longer, just in case he catches up," said Changyang. He held Donglin Yin Shui's slender waist with one hand as he steadied Donglin Yin Shui and slowly placed her on the ground. Donglin Yin Shui immediately became flustered when she felt Jianchun's thick and powerful arms. Her heart began to thump uncontrollably, and her face that was already red became even redder. It seemed like blood was about to ooze out of her. Donglin Yin Shui struggled to stand on the ground. However, as soon as she took a small step, she could not help but cry out in pain. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. She had taken on an attack from Aoyama. Even though the attack had been blocked by the formation, less than 1/100th of its power had actually landed on Donglin Yin Shui. It was still enough to heavily injure Donglin Yin Shui. She could not even walk. Jianchun reacted quickly. He caught Donglin Yin Shui in a single step and said helplessly, "You can't even stand right now. You can't travel alone. Let me carry you." Donglin Yin Shui avoided Jianchun's gaze. She did not dare to look at him at all. She gritted her teeth gently as she struggled inside. Chapter 2373. Compared to Donglin Yin Shui's girlish shyness, Jianchun seemed extremely calm. His breathing was steady, and his mind was calm. He slid his left arm under Donglin Yin Shui's armpit and placed it under her shoulder blade. He placed his right hand under Donglin Yin Shui's knee, and with a slight force, he lifted Donglin Yin Shui up again. Donglin Yin Shui's body immediately stiffened. Although she had cultivated for quite some time, her mental age was equivalent to a 20-year-old girl. Just the contact of her hand with a man was enough to make her blush, let alone being carried by a man. As a result, Donglin Yin Shui's face had already reddened. In particular, she basically pressed her head against Jianchun's chest when she was so close to him. She could even clearly smell the unique presence of a man from Jianchun. For a moment, Donglin Yin Shui felt her head spin. She was stunned. Jinshin was calm. A pair of wings condensed from radiant saint force appeared on his back. With a flap of the wings, he flew close to the ground with Donglin Yinshui in his arms. He completely demonstrated the abilities of a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core. I hope Aoyama doesn't chase after me in the short term, or I'll probably be exposed to Donglin Yinshui. Even though a beauty was in his arms, Jinshin did not have any other thoughts. At this moment, he was slightly worried as he prayed inside. Donglin Yinshui's success or failure was directly related to whether he could enter the Tower of Radiance or not. As a result, Donglin Yinshui could not die in the world of Moon and Star. Now that Donglin Yinshui was heavily injured, she could not even take simple actions. If Aoyama chased after her at this moment, she definitely would not be able to endure a single strike from him. Jinshin needed to step forward. However, Donglin Yinshui had already woken up. If he revealed his strength before Donglin Yinshui, his identity would definitely be exposed. As a result, Jinshin worried about Aoyama chasing after them the most at this moment. Donglin Yinshui gradually returned to normal in Jinshin's arms. Even though she was very reluctant, she knew that she could not change anything. As a result, she could only slowly accept the fact that she was in Jinshin's arms. Donglin Yinshui studied Jinshin secretly. When she discovered that Jinshin only cared about traveling and had no other thoughts, her opinion of Jinshin could not help but change slightly once again. Although he became my protector because he wanted to get close to me with ulterior motives, at the very least, he didn't abandon me in a moment of life and death like the other 8 protectors. When I was injured by Qing Shan and fell unconscious, he didn't abandon me and flee by himself either. Donglin Yinshui thought. Unknowingly, Jinshin had become more and more pleasing to the eye. Even she did not realize that Jinshin had become more and more pleasing to the eye. Even when she was in Jinshin's arms, she did not feel much resistance from the bottom of her heart. At this moment, Donglin Yinshui sniffed Jinshin's chest as hard as she could. She immediately became surprised and thought, "There's the smell of blood." Afterwards, for some reason, Donglin Yinshui actually tore open Jinshin's clothes. Immediately, a few vicious wounds appeared. Jinshin had naturally suffered a few wounds from his battle with Aoyama. A portion of the wounds had completely healed under the powerful regeneration of the chaotic body, without leaving behind any scars at all. However, there were still a few more severe wounds that had not healed completely due to the short amount of time that had passed. Although he had changed into a set of clean clothes as soon as possible, he did not manage to wash off the smell of blood on him. As a result, Donglin Yinshui smelled it and found it immediately. "You're injured?" Donglin Yinshui's face changed when she saw the vicious wounds. "It's just some small wounds. It's nothing." Jinshin did not care at all. However, he grumbled inside. He had never thought that Donglin Yinshui would suddenly change her mind, boldly tearing open his clothes and exposing his wounds. The Donglin Yinshui he knew was not like this. "Does it hurt?" Donglin Yinshui looked at the wounds with mixed feelings and asked softly. He was clearly injured, yet he had to act like nothing was wrong, taking her along with him. At that moment, Donglin Yinshui's heartstrings seemed to have been tugged. Jinshin came to a halt. He lowered his head and stared at Donglin Yinshui strangely. Since when had Donglin Yinshui become so concerned about him? Sensing Jinshin's strange gaze, Donglin Yinshui also realized that she had been overly concerned. She blushed slightly and covered up Jinshin's wounds again. She called out gently, "What are you standing there for? Let's hurry up. If Aoyama catches up, none of us will survive." A while later, Donglin Yinshui could not help but say, "Why don't we stop for a while and heal your wounds first so that they don't worsen? It's just a flesh wound. It's nothing." The two of them remained silent along the way. Jinshin carried Donglin Yinshui for 3 days and 3 nights as fast as he could with his one-colored soul core. Only then did he act like he was exhausted and find an extremely well-hidden cave to stop. After all, the strength of a one-colored soul core was extremely limited. Traveling at such a high speed for 3 days and 3 nights had already reached the limits of what a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core could endure. If he continued on, it would be very easy for him to be exposed, so he needed to stop. The gloomy cave was silent. A fist-sized luminous pearl embedded in the ceiling provided some light. It was possible to make out Jinshin and Donglin Yinshui through the dim light. The two of them sat separately. Jinshin had already closed his eyes to recover, using Radiant Saint Force to heal his wounds. In reality, he had already made a full recovery from his wounds thanks to the regeneration of the chaotic body. He only continued to use Radiant Saint Force to heal for Donglin Yinshui, so that he could find a reasonable explanation for his wounds. Before him, Donglin Yinshui sat on the ground with her arms around her knees. She looked at Jinshin with mixed feelings. She stared at Jinshin like that until Jinshin finished recovering. "You've recovered?" Jinshin opened his eyes and looked at Donglin Yinshui. He asked even though he already knew the answer. Donglin Yinshui was gloomy. She said helplessly, "My soul has been injured by martial soul force, so I can't use Radiant Saint Force. There's even a sliver of martial soul force left in me. Although I've suppressed it with pills, it's also stopped my wounds from healing. As long as the martial soul force remains, I won't be able to recover." Chapter 2374. In other words, I'll have to carry you for the next few days. Jinshin stared at Donglin Yinshui as if he was smiling when he heard that. He naturally knew about Donglin Yinshui's injuries. When she was injured by Aoyama, there was indeed a sliver of martial soul force within her, preventing her from recovering. Although he was completely capable of purging the sliver of martial soul force within Donglin Yinshui with his ability, he would never do that, because he would face the risk of being exposed if he did. After all, he was playing the role of a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core. It was impossible for a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core to possess such an ability. Donglin Yinshui blushed slightly when she heard Jinshin's teasing. She lowered her head and remained silent. She also understood that as long as she did not recover, she would not be able to travel alone. She really would have to rely on Jinshin for a very long time in the world of Moon and Star. After a moment of silence, Donglin Yinshui said gently, "Elder He Tion's whereabouts are unknown. He's probably encountered a mishap. The current world of Moon and Star has become a place where Aoyama can do whatever he wants. As a result, we'll probably be hunted down by Aoyama in the next few days. With our strength, we'll definitely be doomed if Aoyama finds us. The world of Moon and Star has only just opened. Unless the elders of the Sacred Hall learn about the situation in the world of Moon and Star, they won't be able to make the world of Moon and Star open earlier. Otherwise, we'll have to wait a year. I wonder if the two of us can last until then." Donglin Yinshui sighed gently. Her face was filled with worry. Her current situation had already become a hopeless situation in her eyes. She basically could not see any hope of escaping. The trip to the realm of Moon and Star should have been a very safe one for her as a candidate. After all, she had the protection of the 9 great Tao protectors. Even if she were to encounter extremely powerful ferocious beasts, she would be able to easily kill them. Even if she were to encounter extremely powerful ferocious beasts, she would still be able to escape unscathed. All she needed to do was to focus on searching for the Holy Light Origin Pearls. However, Aoyama's sudden intrusion had completely disrupted this year's trial. Not only did her 8 guardians leave her and flee for their lives, even she, as one of the candidates, had to constantly face the nightmare of being killed by Aoyama. In addition, there were many ferocious beasts hiding in various places within the realm of Moon and Star. Some of the more powerful ones even possessed the battle prowess of a peak divine king. Beside her was Chong Yang, who only had a one-colored soul core. With such a weak cultivation, he was basically useless in the world of Moon and Star. He could not even deal with a single vicious beast that appeared, which made Donglin Yinshui despair. "Don't be so pessimistic. Aren't we still alive and well right now?" Jinshin comforted her. He sighed inside when he saw Donglin Yinshui's despair. He continued, "Don't worry. The other hallowed Saint Masters who have entered the world of Moon and Star this time might die, but we will definitely leave here alive." Jinshin's comforting words were clearly useless. Donglin Yin Shui did not treat his words with any importance at all. What use could a radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core be in the world of moon and star? Jinshin and Donglin Yin Shui did not stay for long. Very soon, he continued on his way with Donglin Yin Shui in his arms. He condensed a pair of radiant wings and flew towards the depths of the world of moon and star at the limit of his speed with a one-colored soul core. Along the way, Jinshin sensed the presences of many vicious beasts. Basically, all of them possessed the battle prowess of godhood. There were very few below godhood. Under Jinshin's deliberate actions, he calmly avoided all the vicious beasts he came across along the way. As a matter of fact, he even expanded the senses of his soul from time to monitor the movements of the vicious beasts in order to ensure that he would not be disturbed by a single vicious beast along the way. The senses of his soul were so powerful that they completely surpassed all the divine king that had entered the world of moon and star. As a result, all the vicious beasts in the world of moon and star were unable to hide from his senses, including the peak divine king existences. As a result, Jinshin did not come across a single vicious beast as he carried Donglin Yin Shui along the way. There's another radiant origin pearl. This is the 6th radiant origin pearl I've come across. It's just a pity that these radiant origin pearls are protected by vicious beasts. Even the weakest one possesses the battle prowess of an overgod, so it's difficult to collect them under Donglin Yin Shui's watch. Jinshin glanced to his left casually. A radiant origin pearl was placed in a gloomy cave 100 kilometers in that direction. A huge ape that stood 10 meters tall played around with the resplendent radiant origin pearl. At this moment, Jinshin suddenly came to a halt. He stared ahead with shining eyes as he gradually became stern. A dense, white mist that connected the sky and earth appeared on the distant horizon. At this moment, the dense, white mist expanded towards Jinshin's location extremely quickly. The white mist surged, completely connecting with the sky and earth. It seemed to have become a boundless curtain. It was strange, like a group of ghosts silently moving over. At the same time, the roars of beasts suddenly rang out in Jinshin's surroundings. The roars were filled with fear and great unease. The senses of Jinshin's soul burst out of his body and enveloped a range of several million kilometers in a single instance. He could clearly see vicious beasts constantly roar out in fear. They all left their territories and fled in the opposite direction of the white mist. Even the huge ape that played around with the radiant origin pearl 100 kilometers away from Jinshin roared out. It tossed aside the radiant origin pearl and suddenly fled from its territory, fleeing into the distance. At this moment, Jinshin could clearly feel the ground tremble. This was caused by the huge, vicious beasts running across the ground. All the vicious beasts seemed to fear the white mist that drifted over from afar. They abandoned their territories and fled in panic. What's happening? Donglin Yin Shui also discovered that something was amiss in Jinshin's arms. She looked around before locking onto the mist in the distance in the end. Her face was filled with unease. "The white mist up ahead is extremely strange," said Jinshin. He stared at the white mist, and his face gradually became stern. The senses of his soul were actually unable to penetrate the mist. What is the white mist? It can actually make so many vicious beasts uneasy. Not good. That strange white fog is approaching us. Donglin Yin Shui became extremely stern. Before they had come, the elders had never mentioned anything about the white mist, so she knew nothing about it. "Changyang, what do we do now?" Donglin Yin Shui had no idea what to do at all. Having been born into a noble family, she had grown up under the protection of her seniors. She had never faced a hopeless situation alone. Now that she was in danger, she immediately lost her mind. However, when she saw how composed Jinshin was and how he did not panic at all, for some reason, her flustered heart calmed down slightly. The light in Jinshin's eyes flickered as he stared at the white mist that blotted out the sky. He said, "The white mist is just too vast, and it moves extremely quickly. We don't have enough time to make a detour around it. As a result, there are only two paths before us. Apart from retreating and returning the way we came, we can only charge into the mist. If we return the way we came, it's extremely likely that we'll run into Aoyama again. As a result, we can only charge into the mist. Jianshin quickly made up his mind. In the next moment, he carried Donglin Yinshui and charged into the mist without looking back. P.S. Xiaoyao has posted a picture of Jianshin's junior sister, Bai Yu, on his public account. To those who want to see it, please follow Xiaoyao's public account on WeChat, Xinxing Xiaoyao110. Pinyin is the pseudonym of Xiaoyao, Xinxing. There's also a number for the police, where you can directly search for Xinxing Xiaoyao on the public account. To those who don't know how to follow public accounts, you can open the contact list of your public account. You'll see the menu for public accounts. You can click it, press the plus sign in the upper right corner, and directly search for the public account mentioned above. Xiaoyao's public account had already been updated with many pictures. Replying to Exin will bring up the picture of the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing. Exin. Replying to Mo Tianyun will reveal the Empyrean Demon Lord's true appearance. There are even more pictures of other characters. They are all in historical information. To those who don't know how to find historical information, you can just reply to historical information. Chapter 2375. Coincidentally, just when Jianshan charged into the mist with Donglin Yinshui, the mist gradually slowed down before completely stopping. It did not expand any further. Afterwards, the strange mist that seemed to have fused with the surroundings gradually thinned out. It became fainter and fainter. It was even possible to vaguely make out the scenery within a mist. Finally, after around a minute, the strange mist that had appeared silently completely vanished from the world of moon and star, allowing the surroundings to clear up again. However, strangely, Jianshin and Donglin Yinshui had vanished after charging into the mist. They had completely vanished. Jianshan experienced a strange feeling the moment he stepped into the mist. He felt like he had left the world of moon and star and entered another world. Of course, this feeling only lingered for a split second before he cast it to the back of his head. He began to study the mist instead. Jianshin's gaze became extremely sharp. At that moment, his eyes were like lanterns that shone brightly as he scanned the surroundings. However, he discovered very soon that he was unable to see through the mist with his eyes. The layer of mist was extremely strange. It seemed to contain a mysterious power. Even with Jianshin's eyesight, he struggled to see more than a meter away. After all, he could clearly see everything within 1,000,000 kilometers with his eyes alone in the world of moon and star. However, in this place, the distance he could see was no more than 1 meter. Not only that, even his divine sense was completely useless in this fog. Once it left his body, it would lose all its effects. At this moment, it was no exaggeration to describe Jianshin's situation as that of a blind man. Changyang, I can't see anything here. At this moment, Donglin Yinshui's slightly flustered and uneasy voice rang out. Jianshin immediately felt a strange sensation from his neck. Donglin Yinshui's arms had already wrapped around his neck tightly. Even through Donglin Yinshui's hands, Jianshin could clearly sense Donglin Yinshui's deep unease. There's something strange about the mist. I can't see anything either, Jianshin said calmly. He had become vigilant long ago. Since the appearance of the mist could make all the vicious beasts in the world of moon and star uneasy, it meant that the mist was definitely not as peaceful as it seemed on the surface. There was definitely some fatal danger hidden within. However, Jianshin showed no fear. With his strength, there were very few existences that could pose a threat to him in the world of moon and star. Even if he really did come across some insurmountable danger, he still had the Inata Tower as his final trump card. Jianshin carried Donglin Yinshui as he advanced through the mist in a straight line. He had no sense of time or direction. He had even lost his sense of distance. He had no idea how long he had traveled through the mist, nor did he know how far he had traveled. The expected danger did not appear. His journey was extraordinarily smooth and peaceful. At this moment, a faint, azure light suddenly appeared in the white mist before Jianshin. Jianshin's eyes immediately narrowed. The azure light was so eye-catching and bright in the snow-white mist that it immediately attracted his attention. Jinshin hesitated slightly before speeding up. He flew in the direction of the azure light. As Jinshin rapidly approached it, the azure light became more and more dazzling. At that moment, it seemed like a lamp in the darkness, guiding Jinshin. In the end, Jinshin charged out of the mist under the guidance of the azure light. His vision immediately cleared up. In front of him was a majestic bronze divine hall that was filled with the presence of mulberry granaries. It stood there silently, like a primordial beast from the primordial times. The entire divine hall was filled with the presence of time as if it had existed for countless years. This bronze divine hall was situated in the middle of the dense fog. The green light emitted from its body seemed to carry a mysterious force that dispersed the surrounding fog. I never thought that there would be a place like this hidden in the world of moon and star. Jinshin stared at the divine hall in a daze. After a while of thought, he asked, Donglin Yin Shui, you possess an extraordinary status in the Radiant Saint Hall. Do you know anything about this bronze divine hall? He did not receive a reply to his question. When he lowered his head, he discovered that Donglin Yin Shui's eyes were tightly shut. She had already fainted at some point in time. Jinshin raised his head and looked at the bronze divine hall before looking at the churning mist behind him. He frowned slightly. If he returned the way he had come, he would probably become lost in the mist. This was because he had no sense of direction at all in the strange mist. He would not be able to find his way out at all. As a result, he could only continue onwards. After making up his mind, Jinshin immediately carried the unconscious Donglin Yin Shui and continued onwards. He approached the bronze divine hall. When he climbed up the long stairs of the divine hall and stood in front of the 1,000-foot-tall door, the tightly shut door of the divine hall actually slowly opened with a series of low rumbles. Immediately, a desolate and ancient aura turned into a cool gust of wind that surged out of the bronze divine hall. Jinshin could not help but close his eyes. He was completely submerged in it. Under the cleansing of the presence, he felt like he had been through countless years, as if countless years had passed in a single instance. A while later, when he opened his eyes again and looked at the bronze divine hall with its door open, his gaze immediately deepened. The mysterious bronze divine hall that had existed for who knows how long had actually opened its door for him. He had already realized that it was not a coincidence that he had come here. Instead, the master of the bronze divine hall had purposefully done so. Jinshin stood before the entrance of the bronze divine hall. After a moment of hesitation, he stepped in decisively. Boom! After he entered the divine bronze palace, the door of the divine bronze palace closed with a dull rumble. Jinshin stood within the divine hall with Donglin Yin Shui in his arms. He calmly said to the empty hall, Senior, please show yourself. Why have you led me here? With that, azure light gathered before Jinshin, slowly condensing into the figure of an old man. His body was illusionary, completely condensed from light. He did not possess a physical body. Chapter 2376. Jinshin was overjoyed by the awakening of the sword spirits. Ever since he had helped Mo Tinyun's original body break free and fuse the twin swords, the sword spirits had fallen into a slumber due to exhaustion. No matter how he called out to them, there was no response. At this moment, the slumbering sword spirits had finally begun to awaken, which made Jinshin extremely happy. However, at the same time, he realized that the old man before him was probably not as simple as he seemed. He could vaguely sense that the sword spirits had awakened from their slumber because of this old man. At this moment, the sword spirits had already appeared above Jinshin's head. They had turned into a pair of illusionary young men completely condensed from light. The man was handsome, while the woman was beautiful. They seemed like a perfect match. They stared at the old man, condensed from azure light, as they gradually became stern. They called out, Primeval Chi. I never thought we'd be able to see a spirit condensed from a sliver of primeval chi. Jinshin was surprised when he heard that. He could not help but carefully study the old man. Even though he did not really understand what primeval chi meant, He could vaguely sense that the old man was probably in existence similar to the sword spirits. The old man, condensed from azure light, stared at the sword spirits with mixed feelings. He sighed, a spirit condensed from yin and yang qi. I never thought that I'd be able to meet an existence similar to me in this cursed land after all these years. However, you seem to be extremely weak. Senior, you're the hall spirit of this divine hall? Jinshin could not help but ask out of curiosity when he heard that. The old man looked at Jinshin and nodded. You've guessed correctly. I am the hall spirit of this divine hall. Then may I ask who the master of this divine hall is? Jinshin continued to ask. The old man sighed softly when he heard this. There was a hint of loneliness on his face as he said dejectedly, Master has already perished in the annals of history. He isn't a person of this epoch. A gleam of light flashed through the sword spirit's eyes when they heard that. They called out, You were born in the previous aeon? The old man shook his head again. More accurately speaking, I was born in the aeon before the aeon before that. The aeon before the aeon before that. The sword spirits were surprised. They stared at the old man deeply and said, Since you've already existed for so long, why haven't there been any rumors about you in the outside world? That's because I've been trapped here, unable to leave at all. No one knows where I am, so there's obviously no news about me in the outside world, said the old man. He stared at Jinshin and the sword spirits deeply before continuing. You are the first living beings to see me after my master's death, as well as the first beings to set foot in this cursed land. Cursed land? Why is this place known as the Cursed Land? And what's the mist outside? Is the mist the reason why you've been trapped? Jinshin asked. No. The mist you see is not what's trapping me. Instead, it's a wondrous power formed from the combination of the power of the primeval divine hall and the power of the curse. As for the Cursed Land, it's the world of moon and star you were in before, as well as the world where the primeval divine hall was. These are all cursed places. The power of the curse was left behind by the Tao Unity Saint. It has already fused with this world, fusing with the laws. It's basically a new law that exists everywhere. It's impossible for you to sense its existence with your current level of cultivation. It's also because of the existence of the power of the curse that I'm unable to leave this place. Even the former territory of my master, the Saint of Grand Clarity, has been severely damaged. The world of Grand Clarity is the current world of moon and star. The old man said slowly. So the world of moon and star used to be called the world of Grand Clarity. All right, since the mist is the power of the primeval divine hall, and you're the artifact spirit of the primeval divine hall, it means that the mist must be under your control. I've only come here because of your guidance. May I ask why you brought me here? Jinshin asked. Because I can sense a droplet of essence blood from a saint in your body. Most importantly, there's yin and yang qi in your body like mine. It's exactly because of the yin and yang qi that I brought you here, the artifact spirit said. The essence blood of a saint? Is this the essence blood of a saint you speak of? Jinshin was doubtful. He used his finger to point at the location where the droplet of essence blood was. That's right. That's the essence blood of saint. In my master's era, the owner of this drop of blood essence was the most powerful saint in the world. Of course, in your epoch, saints might have another name, said the artifact spirit of the primeval divine hall. Jinshin finally understood with that. Saints were actually grand exalts. The curse of the Taoist saint is nowhere near as powerful as it was in the past, after 2 epochs. However, if you want to remove the curse and restore my freedom, you still need 10 droplets of essence blood. If you can bring me 10 droplets of essence blood and restore my freedom, I'll offer up a strand of primeval qi. The absolute beginning qi is a kind of energy that is born together with the primal chaos. Although it is inferior to the primal chaos force in terms of level and is on the same level as your yin and yang qi, it contains its own profoundness. I believe that all of you are well aware of just how beneficial it is to all of you. Not only is it not a loss for you to exchange for 10 droplets of essence blood, but it's also a great fortune, said the artifact spirit. Only the sword spirits who existed like him were truly worthy of his attention. He did not place any importance on Jianshan at all. Even though Jianshan possessed a droplet of essence blood, he knew that Jianshan had only obtained it by chance. He only possessed a single droplet. As for a drop of saint's blood essence that had lost quite a bit of its power, it wasn't of much use to him. As soon as the sword spirits heard that the artifact spirit was offering a strand of primeval chi as a reward, their eyes burned with desire. However, they calmed down again very soon. The desire in their eyes vanished, and they became filled with pity. They sighed gently. 10 droplets of essence blood from Grand Exalts. That's just far too difficult. After all, essence blood is different from regular blood. Let alone essence blood. Even regular blood from Grand Exalts is basically impossible to obtain unless we return to the time when our old master reigned supreme. Qing Suo sighed as well. Chapter 2377. Master, a strand of primeval chi can allow us to surpass our former peak and take a step further, making us even more powerful, Ziying said with a sliver of eagerness in her voice. There was no creature in the world that could resist the temptation of becoming even more powerful, whether it was cultivators in large numbers or innate spirits like the sword spirits. Jianshan was surprised when he heard that. The sword spirits were already extremely powerful existences when they were at their peak. When they fused their swords, they possessed devastating power. Just how heaven-defying would they be if they took a step further? The primeval chi was actually so beneficial to the sword spirits that even Jianshan was tempted. He wanted to obtain it eagerly. The sword spirits had already accepted him as their master. If they became even more powerful, it would indirectly increase his battle prowess as well. Jianshan sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. He looked at the hall spirit with mixed feelings and said in thought, "Actually, there's no need to go through so much trouble if you want to remove the curse. All you need to do is ask a Grand Exalt on the same level as a saint, and you should be able to remove the curse easily. If you're willing, I can find a way to find a saint for you." After learning that primeval chi was of great use to the sword spirits, Jianshan began to think about how he could obtain a strand of primeval chi for the sword spirits. He did not even dare to think about obtaining 10 droplets of essence blood from Grand Exalts because it was impossible. As a matter of fact, he would not be able to obtain it for a very long time. Even though finding a Grand Exalt was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, it was much easier than finding 10 droplets of essence blood. Jianshan considered finding a Grand Exalt to remove the curse on the artifact spirit in exchange for a strand of primeval chi. After all, there are only a handful of Grand Exalts in the current saint's world. With his current strength, it would not be easy for him to see an expert like that. As a result, it was not excessive at all for him to exchange for a strand of primeval chi with these conditions. At the same time, he believed that once Grand Exalts learned of the primeval divine hall's existence, those great Grand Exalts would definitely personally protect it given how precious it was. After all, the primeval divine hall before him was a peak god artifact that was no weaker than the twin swords. However, Jianshan's words seemed to touch the hall spirit's bottom line. The eyes of the artifact spirit immediately sharpened. It stared at Jianshan viciously and said coldly, "Brat, it's best if you don't do that, or I won't spare you even with the protection of the yin and yang qi." Jianshan immediately frowned when he heard the hall spirit's agitated reaction and its threatening words. He stared at the old man and actually became rather confused about what the artifact spirit was planning. "Primeval, my master's method was indeed the only method that could help you break free quickly back then," the sword spirit said with displeasure. The hall spirit said coldly, "I've already thought of getting a saint to take action. If I really want to do that, I would have broken free long ago. Why would I still be trapped today? It's just that once a saint learns of my existence, I'll have no choice but to accept him as my master. After my master's death, I no longer want to yield to anyone, even if they're the most powerful saint in the world." Jianshan immediately revealed a strange expression when he heard that. He only felt that the primeval artifact spirit was just too unconventional. It had clearly become an artifact spirit, yet it wanted to be free. The sword spirit stared at the artifact spirit with mixed feelings and said, "But you're only an artifact spirit in the end. The mission of an artifact spirit is to fight for their masters. It's basically impossible for you to break free from the restraints of fate. Even if you can hide for a while, you won't be able to hide forever. As long as you break free and appear in the outside world, you'll be discovered by the sovereigns of the world sooner or later." You don't need to worry about that. The artifact spirit snorted coldly. 10 droplets of essence blood in exchange for a strand of primeval chi that can make you even stronger. Are you willing or not? I know you're very weak right now, so it's impossible for you to obtain the essence blood, but your innate spirits condense from a strand of yin and yang chi after all. In the future, you'll have the ability to do so sooner or later. Primeval spirit, if you want 10 droplets of essence blood, you should beg our master, not us, replied the sword spirits. Your master? The primeval spirit studied Jianshun with a sliver of disdain. Him? I don't know why you've chosen him as your master, but I don't think he'll have the ability to find 10 droplets of essence blood for me in the future. Although there's already a drop of essence blood in his body, I can also sense that the drop of essence blood in his body was left behind by a saint from the previous epoch. It's not from this epoch. It's all due to luck that he was able to obtain this drop of essence blood. It's impossible for luck like this to accompany him forever. The artifact spirit suddenly paused when it reached there. It continued with a strange expression. Do you mean to say that you want me to wait for your master to become a saint in the future? Before the sword spirits could reply, the artifact spirit sneered. If that's really what you think, then all I can say is that you're far too naive. I know better than you just how difficult it is to become a saint and how many hurdles you have to go through. In the age where my master reigned supreme, the path to becoming a saint was also known as the path of burying bones. The reason why it was called that was because every single saint walked over a pile of bones. Every single saint was formed from countless corpses, burying all the prodigies of a generation. Your master might possess some ability and be one of the prodigies of the present age. However, in the future, he might become a stepping stone for other prodigies on the path to becoming a saint. You wanted to place my hopes on your master, but in my opinion, you're just making me waste my time waiting for nothing. The artifact spirit said confidently. It did not hide its disdain for Jianshun at all. Although it was only an artifact spirit, it was condensed from a strand of primeval chi after all. It possessed its own pride. Even grand exalts of the world struggled to make it yield, let alone Jianshun, who is only a divine king right now. The sword spirits were extremely angered by the artifact spirit's disdain for Jianshun. Qing Suo immediately snorted coldly. Our master isn't as mediocre as you've described him to be. Primeval Chi, open your eyes and take a good look. You're still unconvinced? Very well. Let me see where your yin and yang chi's confidence comes from. The artifact spirit did not treat the sword spirit's words too seriously. However, it still studied Jianshun seriously. Chapter 2378. Why, I'm impossible. Impossible. This is definitely impossible. The artifact spirit of inception could not help but stagger backwards. Its face was filled with shock and extreme fear as it stared at Jianshun. Jianshun frowned when the artifact spirit of inception lost its composure. He growled, "What do you see from me? Why? Why? Your existence is not permitted by the world. The world can't tolerate you at all. You won't be able to escape being wiped out by the world in the end. You won't have a good ending. You won't be able to reach the end of your path of growth." The artifact spirit of inception pointed at Jianshun as it howled hysterically. Its current reaction was like it had seen something extremely terrifying from Jianshun. Even the artifact spirit of inception, who had lived for 2 eons and had followed a saint, was unable to remain composed. Jianshun frowned. He stared at the artifact spirit of inception deeply. The artifact spirit of inception's current reaction made him think of the spirit of the Anita Tower he had seen back on the Tianyuan continent. When the spirit of the Anita Tower had seen a corner of his future with its special ability, its expression had changed drastically, just like the artifact spirit of inception. It had cried out in a similar manner. "Can you tell me what you see from me?" Why is my existence not permitted by the world? Why does the world want to wipe me out? Jianchen asked once again. He was eager to learn the answer from the artifact's spirit of inception. Jianchen was just far too curious about the corner of his future. At the same time, he felt deeply uneasy and worried. Just the thought of being wiped out by the world was enough to make him shiver. Jianchen struggled to calm down. Because you are a taboo. Your existence shouldn't have appeared at all. As for what I see, it's a secret of the heavens. I can't tell you. The artifact's spirit of inception stared at Jianchen in fear as it said in a shaken manner. At that moment, it looked at Jianchen with an extraordinarily stern gaze. It no longer looked down on him like before. Perhaps you haven't sensed any abnormalities right now, nor have you sensed any bad signs, because you're still too weak right now. You're so weak that any random expert can crush you to death. As a result, you obviously won't touch the taboo. But in the future, when your strength reaches a sufficient level, you'll naturally know what you have to face in the end. At that time, you'll become an enemy of the world, of the entire universe. If the world wants to wipe you out, no one can help you. Even the most powerful saints in the world won't be able to protect you. Even the yin and yang qis won't be of any use in the future. Your only fate is death. You will completely vanish from the world. That will be your final destination, the artifact's spirit of inception said with an extremely heavy voice. Artifact spirit of inception, it's still too early to come to a conclusion like that. Can you clearly see Master's death in that corner of the future? The artifact spirit of inception's words greatly displeased the sword spirits. Ziying immediately rebutted. No living being can avoid being targeted by the world. Even powerful saints will still die to the immeasurable calamity at the end of the great epic. They will be purged by the world, the artifact spirit of inception said with a heavy voice. Most of the saints you speak of are just ordinary people with extraordinary talent who grew up step by step. How can they be compared to Master? Ziying bellowed. Since Master has appeared, he definitely won't die. Even if he faces the annihilation of the world in the future, he'll survive, Qing Suo also swore. He was filled with confidence in Jianchen. The artifact's spirit of inception fell silent. It had gradually calmed down now. It stared at Jianchen in interest as the light of wisdom flickered through its eyes. After a while, it suddenly said, "If you can find me 10 drops of the saint's blood essence and help me break the curse of the Tao, ye saint, then I can change my initial thoughts for you. I will take you as my master and let you become my second master." Take me as your master and make me your second master? Jianchen was stunned by the sudden change in attitude of the artifact spirit of inception. He stared at the artifact spirit of inception strangely and chuckled. Your offer is indeed quite tempting, but I don't think it'll be of much help to me. Once I have the ability to obtain enough essence blood from Grand Exalts, you might not be of much use to me anymore. Unless you serve me as your master right now. Only then will I spare no effort to search for essence blood from Grand Exalts for you. The artifact spirit of inception shook its head. Not only can I not leave before the curse of the Tao Union Saint is removed, but I can't help you at all either. If you want me to serve you as my master, you need to give me 10 droplets of essence blood from Grand Exalts so that I can regain my freedom. And I believe that before you become a saint, the help I can provide you will far surpass the yin and yang qi. The artifact spirit of inception was filled with confidence. Afterwards, Jianchen felt the landscape before him suddenly change. He had been taken to another, gloomy space by the artifact spirit of inception. Before him, several dozen abnormally large beings sat there with their eyes closed. These living beings looked very much like humans on the outside, but in reality, they weren't humans. Do you see that? They're the strongest generals that used to follow my master. Even though they've already died and their souls have dispersed, their bodies and all the power within them have been perfectly preserved under the protection of my inception force. As long as you implant new souls into them, they'll be able to fight for you immediately, the artifact spirit of inception said. How powerful are these people? Jianchen asked. He stared at the fallen generals with shining eyes. These experts were all ancient beings from 2 eons ago. Before you become a saint, these generals will be your greatest help. After all, they were once nurtured by my master, the Saint of Grand Pure One, through great effort, said the hall spirit. Jiansheng was immediately interested when he heard that. His eyes burned with desire. It was not difficult to guess just how powerful the battle prowess of the generals was from what the hall spirit had said. Of course, before you find 10 droplets of essence blood from me, it's impossible for these generals to fight for you. The power of the curse from the Tao Union Saint has restrained me. Before the curse is removed, I don't have the power to awaken them, the hall spirit continued. Can a droplet of essence blood be enough for you to awaken 1 or 2 generals? Jiansheng asked eagerly. If it was just 1 droplet, he could take it out right now. No, 10 droplets of essence blood. Not a single droplet less, or I won't be able to remove the curse from the Tao Union Saint. Chapter 2379. Saints were experts on the same level as Grand Exalts. Jiansheng did not even dare to dream of obtaining 10 droplets of essence blood from Grand Exalts. He understood that he could not obtain the assistance of the artifact spirit or even directly possess the bronze divine hall in a short amount of time. Afterwards, Jiansheng conversed with the artifact spirit for a while. In the end, he was forced to accept the fact that it was impossible for him to obtain anything useful from the primeval divine hall before he obtained 10 droplets of essence blood from Grand Exalts. I'll leave behind an imprint on the back of your hand. This imprint is the key to the world of grand clarity. When you find 10 droplets of essence blood one day, activate the imprint using the method I've taught you. The gateway to the world of grand clarity will open before you. Remember, you can only use this imprint to open the gateway to the world of grand clarity when you're in normal space. In some strange places, or some sealed spaces, or even some small worlds opened up by supreme experts, this imprint will lose its effect. This imprint can only open the gateway to the world of grand clarity once for you. So before you find 10 droplets of essence blood, you cannot activate this imprint. I no longer have the power to leave behind a second key to the world of grand clarity on you while I'm bound by the power of the curse. Even if you enter the world of grand clarity through another method, I only have the power to bring you here once because the primeval divine hall is not in the world of grand clarity. That power can only be used after you find 10 droplets of essence blood. The curse of the Tao Union Saint has suppressed me for far too long. I can't stay awake for too long, so I need to continue sleeping. You can leave on your own. The absolute beginning artifact spirit gave a lot of instructions. After its final sentence sounded, its body, which was formed from green light, scattered with the wind like a wisp of green smoke. Jiansheng was sent back to the first floor of the primeval divine hall by the artifact spirit, where he had just entered. The method to activate the imprint was imprinted in his head as well. The ancient hall immediately became quiet. Only Jiansheng stood there alone in the vast hall, as well as the unconscious Donglin Yin Shui in his arms. Master, we still haven't recovered from the fusion of the twin swords. We still need to sleep for a while. The voices of the sword spirits rang out in Jiansheng's head. Afterwards, Jiansheng could sense that the sword spirits had fallen into a deep slumber once again. At that moment, Jiansheng felt guilty. He understood that the fusion of the twin swords had cost the sword spirits far too much when he ignored their objections in order to help Mo Tianyun's original body break free. Even now, they still had not recovered. I have to obtain the 10 droplets of essence blood from Grand Exalts. Even if it's not for the primeval divine hall, it has to be for the strand of primeval force. At that moment, Jiansheng swore inside. The only thing he could compensate the sword spirits now was the primeval force that could allow them to reach another level in their peak condition. After that, he looked at the back of his hand. On the back of his hand, there was a faint imprint. As he watched, the imprint was gradually fading away until it completely disappeared. However, Jiansheng knew that the key to the world of grand clarity had completely fused with the back of his hand, hidden away. Only he could sense the existence of the imprint. Jinshan carried the unconscious Donglin, Yin Shui, out of the primeval divine hall and appeared outside. The outside of the primeval divine hall was the same as when he had arrived. The surroundings were enveloped by a strange mist, while the primeval divine hall shone with a dazzling azure light that seemed to last forever, illuminating the surroundings. That should be the tunnel to leave this place. Jinshan stared ahead. The strange mist formed a whirlpool that slowly revolved there. Even though it was white within the whirlpool, Jinshan could sense the power of space. However, he did not leave because he vaguely understood that as long as he remained here, Donglin Yinshui would remain unconscious. She would never wake up. Her unconsciousness did not come from her wounds. Instead, it came from the artifact spirit of Primeval. The artifact spirit of Primeval was unwilling to accept another as its master, so it did not want Donglin Yinshui to know about its existence. It was just in case Donglin Yinshui leaked the news and drew in experts from the outside world. If she wakes up, I really will be restrained. It looks like I'll have to stay here for a while longer. Jinshan was in no hurry to leave. Instead, with a thought, the Inata Tower suddenly appeared. The Inata Tower that was covered in sword slashes and seemed extremely damaged expanded to several hundred meters tall under Jinshan's control. It stood there silently. The Hall Spirit had already hidden in this strange space for 2 epochs. As a result, he did not have to worry about the experts of the outside world finding the Inata Tower when he took it out. Afterwards, Jinshan placed the unconscious Donglin Yinshui outside the Inata Tower so that she would continue to be affected by the Hall Spirit. He entered the Inata Tower with a flash. What Jinshan did not know was that the moment he took out the Inata Tower, a hazy figure sat within a hazy light within the majestic heavenly palace of Bishing at the very center of the Prosper Plain. The power of ways revolved around the figure, invoking the mysteries of the world. Vaguely, the sound of ways seemed to ring through the sky like a great bell. The figure seemed to have fused with the ways, becoming the ways of the world. It was truly supreme, possessing supreme power that could control the operations of the world. It represented the supreme will of the world. At this moment, the figure seemed to sense something. His eyes suddenly snapped open. They were a pair of eyes filled with endless coldness. They were emotionless and looked down on all life. Primeval force, the figure murmured. His voice contained all the sounds in the world. His cold gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space and reach the depths of the universe. Hey, break through here. Jinshan stood outside a divine hall within the Inata Tower as he spoke to the black-robed Heya. Heya had already reached the peak of the Divine King realm, and he had comprehended the mysteries of the primordial realm after receiving the Flower of Ways from Jinshan. He could break through at any time. However, the divine hall he stayed in before was unable to endure the pulses of energy from his breakthrough due to its limited level. As a result, he could only postpone the breakthrough under Jinshan's request. Now that they were in the wondrous space where the artifact spirit resided, Jinshan did not have to worry about the Inata Tower being exposed. As a result, he set the Inata Tower as the place where Heyu would break through. Yes, master, Heyu replied politely before sitting down on the ground. He began to break through. Jinshan smiled happily as he watched Heyu prepare to break through. Heia's breakthrough to the primordial realm held extremely great significance to him. This was because it meant that he would have a primordial realm expert under his control, and it would be a primordial realm expert who was completely under his control. He could take action for him at any time. At that moment, Jinshan could not help but think of what had happened in the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Back then, when the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian faced the invasion of the heavenly demon religion, just the vice leader of the primordial realm, Huayan, was enough to suffocate all the experts of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. At that time, the primordial realm was synonymous with expert. As a matter of fact, in the eyes of many Divine King experts, the primordial realm was an insurmountable mountain. This was because there was a huge divide between the primordial realm and godhood. Out of the countless Divine King experts in the Saints' world, there were very few who could truly reach the primordial realm. Once a divine kingdom possessed a primordial realm expert, the status of the divine kingdom would immediately change. It would become an empire. Chapter 2380. Suddenly, Jinshin's heart skipped a beat. He slowly raised his hand, and an extremely beautiful orchid slowly appeared in his hand. The orchid seemed to be alive, possessing quite a bit of intelligence. As soon as it appeared, it swayed as if it was trying to get on good terms with Jinshin. Jinshin stared at the immortal devouring orchid in his hand as he smiled faintly. "You've finally reached godhood. You should be able to enjoy the two corpses of the divine king now." As he said that, the two corpses of the divine king slowly drifted out from the divine hall, landing beside Jinshin's feet gently. The two corpses of the divine king belonged to the people Jinshin had sent to deal with him when he left the Radiant Saint Hall. In the end, they were dragged into the divine hall by Heiya and died to his hands. Jinshin had always kept their corpses for the immortal devouring orchid to devour. Their corpses were the nutrients for the immortal devouring orchid to grow. The immortal devouring orchid possessed a certain level of intelligence now. As soon as it saw the two corpses of the divine king, it became especially excited. It immediately leapt down from Jinshin's hand and took root in one of the corpses. Its roots began to spread. The current immortal devouring orchid had only reached godhood recently, so it was equivalent to an early deity. With its current strength, it was naturally unable to devour the corpses of two god kings that far surpassed it in a single stroke. As a result, it only used its roots to stab into the corpse's wounds, bringing out a droplet of the divine king's blood. It began to absorb it slowly. The energy within the corpses of divine kings was just too tremendous to the immortal devouring orchid right now. As a result, the immortal devouring orchid could only absorb a single droplet of the divine king's blood at a time. Jinshin watched the immortal devouring orchid's actions quietly. His eyes were filled with eagerness. The immortal devouring orchid at early deity might only be able to absorb a single droplet of the divine king's blood at a time. But as it rapidly became stronger in the future, the amount of blood it could absorb would constantly increase. Once it reached a certain level of strength, it would be able to directly devour an entire corpse or even multiple divine king's corpses. "I'll give the two corpses of the divine king to you. In the future, stay here and properly increase your strength," Jinshin said gently. Right now, the immortal devouring orchid was unable to provide him with any assistance. But he firmly believed what the sword spirits had said before. The immortal devouring orchid would be a great assistance to him in the future. Where Qing's hand was. Qing Yishuan currently sat on the fortune jade that was the size of a millstone. She shone with golden light, giving off a holy presence. Laws of the sword revolved around her as sword qi condensed. They shone with dazzling white light as they revolved around Qing Yishuan like tiny tadpoles. With Qing Yishuan as the center, the area several dozen meters around her was enveloped by sharp sword qi. Early overgod, Jinshin could tell Qing Yishuan's current strength with a single glance. He could not help but nod secretly. At this rate, Qing Yishuan would reach the divine king's level of cultivation or even the primordial realm before too long. Of course, the reason she was able to improve so quickly was not only because of the golden core of the laws of sword in her body, but also because of the fortune divine jade. It's very easy to break through the bottlenecks at the beginning. So with the assistance of the golden core of laws and the fortune jade, her rate of progress can be described as godlike. However, the further she goes, the more difficult it becomes to break through. Even with the golden core of laws and the fortune jade, she needs some time to settle down. "I wonder how long it'll take you to comprehend the laws of the sword to the divine king's level of cultivation," murmured Qing Yishuan softly. With the fortune jade, he could directly comprehend the mysteries of the golden core of laws. In just half a year, he could reach early divine king's level of comprehension of a law. However, it was impossible for Qing Yishuan to reach his speed. As a result, even if Qing Yishuan used the same method as Jinshin, she would still take much longer than Jinshin. Jinshin reached out, and Qing Yishuan who sat on the fortune jade, was immediately enveloped by an invisible power. She slowly rose up and left the fortune jade. The fortune jade, which was the size of a millstone, suddenly flew up and landed in Jinshin's hand. During this process, Qing Yishuan failed to sense anything at all because she had been taken away by Jinshin's power from the Inata Tower. Under Jinshin's purposeful control, it did not affect her at all. Afterwards, Jinshin left the 9th floor with the fortune jade and appeared before Heiya on the 1st floor. With a thought, he controlled the power of the Inata Tower and placed the fortune jade below Heiya in the same manner. Immediately, the misty light from the fortune jade engulfed Heiya, causing his figure to fade in and out of sight. With the assistance of the fortune jade, Jinshin could clearly sense that Heiya's presence had risen several times faster than before. Clearly, the fortune jade would be extremely helpful to Heiya's breakthrough. I hope you can reach the primordial realm successfully before I leave, thought Jinshin. In order for Heiya to reach the primordial realm in the shortest amount of time possible, Jinshin used everything he could think of. He even used a treasure like the fortune jade on Heiya without any hesitation. He really did everything he could to nurture Heiya. Jinshin did not remain idle afterwards. He used this short amount of time to enter secluded cultivation as well. Out of the 7 laws I inherited in the underground cavern, I've comprehended the laws of strength, space, and destruction to the divine king realm. As for the laws of creation, fire, corrosion, and curses, I've already comprehended the laws of curses to mid-over God. I'm not far away from the divine king realm. I need to comprehend the 7 laws to the divine king realm as soon as possible, as this will determine whether I can leave the desolate plane with ease in the future. Even if I can't keep the Inata Tower, I can only hand it over to the heavenly palace of Bishing personally. I can't let anyone else benefit from it. Jinshin closed his eyes. The laws that belong to the power of curses slowly descended and revolved around him. Chapter 23:81. The sudden development roused Jinshin from his comprehension of the laws of curses. He opened his eyes and looked at Heiya nearby. He smiled happily. Heiya had finally broken through the shackles of the divine king's realm and successfully reached the primordial realm. He had become a primordial realm expert. Master! Before long, the energy around Heiya gradually dispersed. He stood up and bowed towards Jinshin with undisguised excitement. Your golden core of laws has stabilized. Jinshin stared at Heiya with shining eyes. Heiya nodded. He glanced at the fortune jade below him and said excitedly, logically speaking, it should have taken quite some time for the golden core of laws to evolve from the divine king to the primordial realm. However, not only has this piece of jade shortened the time required, but it has even sped up the evolution of my golden core of laws, allowing me to consolidate my cultivation as an infinite prime in an extremely short amount of time. Master, I've officially become a primordial realm expert now. From today onwards, I can truly contribute to Master. Heiya was overjoyed. He was filled with deep gratitude towards Jinshin. This was because he understood that if it were not for the invaluable heavenly resources that Jinshin had given him extremely generously, his plan to reach the primordial realm probably would have been put on hold indefinitely. As a matter of fact, he might not even have the opportunity to reach the primordial realm. The primordial realm had once been a realm that Heiya could only dream of. It was a dream that he pursued his entire life. Now, his dream had finally come true. Yeah, you haven't let me down. Jinshin nodded in satisfaction. At this moment, Heiya looked at the fortune jade below him. Undisguised amazement filled his face as he asked, Master, may I ask what this is? I feel like sitting on it has not only shortened the time it takes for my golden core of laws to evolve, but it's also countless times easier for me to comprehend the laws of the world. The fortune jade was a supreme treasure of the world. It was rare and precious. Even many grand exalts did not possess one, so Heiya naturally did not recognize it. It's better if you don't know about the existence of this thing. Jinshin seemed to have some misgivings and did not reveal the existence of the fortune divine jade to Heiya. Heiya also understood that the jade at his feet was no small matter, so he did not ask. After that, Jianshun gave Black Crow some instructions before continuing to comprehend the curse law. This time, Jianshun sat on the Fortune Jade. With the assistance of the Fortune Jade, the speed at which he comprehended the laws of curses increased exponentially. Many of the mysteries of curses that were previously difficult to comprehend instantly became much clearer. Soon after, Jianshun's body, which was seated on the creation divine jade, trembled slightly as his tightly shut eyes opened. My laws of curses have successfully broken through to the Divine King realm as well, remaining at the early Divine King realm. Now, I've comprehended 4 of the 7 laws to the Divine King realm. Only the laws of creation, the laws of fire, and the laws of corrosion remain. The law of curses is truly incomparably profound. Once I grasp the law of curses, I only need to possess a strand of my opponent's hair, a single strand of hair, or even a personal item, and then I'll be able to use it as a medium to utilize the power of curses from a long distance away and kill without leaving a trace. As a matter of fact, when the difference in cultivation between the two of us is too great, I don't even need any items or mediums. I only need to think about them, and I can cast curses from afar. With my current ability, I don't even need to personally appear if I want to kill someone like Jianshun. I only need to cast curses outside the Radiant Saint Hall, and Jianshun's soul will be wiped out. Even in an open battle, I can cast curses with the laws of curses and make them only use 80 or 90% of their strength. Jianshun could not help but sneer when he thought about the various wonders of the laws of curses. The power of curses was indeed nowhere near as powerful as the laws of the sword and the laws of strength in an open battle, but it could achieve many things that the laws of the sword and the laws of strength could not. It could indirectly increase his battle prowess. The flow of time is completely different in different spaces. I don't even know how much time has passed while I've been cultivating. The gateway to the world of Moon and Star will be opened by the Radiant Saint Hall again in a year. It looks like it's time for me to leave. Jianshun ended his cultivation. After a moment of thought, he placed the Fortune Jade back on Qing Yishuan's seat and left the Inata Tower. Heyu would be of great help to Jianshun after breaking through to the primordial realm. As a result, Jianshun did not leave Heya in the Inata Tower. Instead, he got Heya to remain in the Divine Hall with his presence concealed so that he could take action at any time. After all, the Inata Tower could not be used at all times during such a sensitive period. Jianshun stowed the Inata Tower away and entered the swirl of mist with Donglin Yin Shui in his arms. The whirlpool was clearly a spatial tunnel similar to teleportation formations. As soon as he stepped into the whirlpool, Jianshun felt like he had stepped into another world. However, this feeling only lasted for an instant before his vision returned to normal. Looking around, he saw that he had already appeared in a beautiful mountain forest, and in the sky above him, a moon and a star hung there, sprinkling down a bright starlight. Jianshun knew that he had returned to the world of moon and star when he saw the star and moon above him. The world of moon and star was actually the world of grand clarity mentioned by the artifact spirit of primeval. 2 eons ago, this world was the territory of the master of the artifact spirit of primeval, the saint of grand clarity. However, after 2 eons, the current world of grand clarity was no longer as glorious as it was in the past. The world of grand clarity is also filled with the curse of the Tao Union Saint. Not only does the existence of the curse make the world of grand clarity even more fragile, but it even affects the vicious beasts that live here, Jianshun thought. He closed his eyes and sensed for a while. Although he was unable to find the curse left behind by the Tao Union Saint with his current level of cultivation, he had grasped the laws of curses after all, so he could naturally sense it vaguely. The reason why the vicious beasts that live here are protected by the world, allowing them to display great battle prowess, is probably related to the Saint of Grand Clarity. Although the Saint of Grand Clarity is dead, he was still a grand exalt who had transformed into a way after all. Before he died, he used his supreme will to influence the world and set down some sort of law. As for the reason why the vicious beasts lack intelligence, it's probably related to the Tao Union Saint's curse. Vaguely, Jianshin seemed to understand many things. As a result, the world of Moon and Star no longer seemed mysterious to him. Chapter 2382. But even if it really is like what I imagine it to be, who knows how long it'll take for me to become the ruler of the world of Moon and Star. 10 droplets of essence blood from Grand Exalts isn't that easy. Jianshan dismissed his thoughts and stopped thinking about this for now. Instead, he lowered his head and observed Donglin Yinshui. Donglin Yinshui remained in his arms. Her eyes were still closed, and she was unconscious. Her senses towards the outside world have been reduced to 0. Her wounds haven't worsened, but they haven't improved either. Now that the mist is gone, she should wake up very soon, Jianshin murmured. He observed the surroundings before flying off in a certain direction. Donglin Yinshui was unconscious, so there was no need for him to continue hiding his strength. He immediately traveled as quickly as he could, flying towards the depths of the world of Moon and Star. At the same time, he used the laws of space. With the assistance of the laws of space, he moved extremely quickly. He could cross 1,000 kilometers or even 2,000 kilometers in a single instance. A distance of 10,000 miles was merely a few breaths of time in his eyes. Although I don't know how much time has passed, I need to get as far away as possible before Donglin Yinshui wakes up and avoid Aoyama. Although I don't fear Aoyama, it's impossible for Donglin Yinshui to remain unconscious forever. Once she wakes up, I won't be able to take action, or my identity will be exposed, and I won't be able to enter the Tower of Radiance anymore. Now, I can only hope that Aoyama has already left the world of Moon and Star. Jianshin thought. As he traveled at full speed, he paid attention to Donglin Yinshui at all times. Once Donglin Yinshui showed signs of waking up, he would need to slow down. Jianshin moved with lightning speed. Spatial power revolved around him as if he had fused with space, allowing him to move even faster than lightning. In just a short moment, he had already traveled several million kilometers. Suddenly, Jianshin came to a halt. He stopped in a stone forest and stared ahead. A white-robed divine king lay on the ground 100 meters away. Most of his pure white robes had been dyed red with blood. He had completely lost all signs of life, having been reduced to an ice-cold corpse. Jianshan arrived before the corpse and looked at the familiar face of the divine king. He recognized the divine king. He was one of the protectors who had come here with Donglin Yinshui. However, he had abandoned Donglin Yinshui when he was pursued by Aoyama. Jianshin felt no sympathy for the death of the divine king at all. At the same time, the deaths of these people were within his expectations. Aoyama had entered the world of Moon and Star to clean up the candidates training there. However, with the enmity between the martial soul lineage and the Radiant Saint Hall, even if the protectors abandoned the candidates and fled for their lives, they would not be able to escape death in the end. I wonder how many protectors are still alive in the world of Moon and Star, and whether the other 4 candidates are dead or not, Jianshin murmured. However, he did not let go of the protector's corpse. He stowed it away in his divine hall. Now that the immortal devouring orchid had gradually matured, it required more and more corpses as it grew stronger. Instead of leaving the divine king's corpse here to benefit the vicious beasts, he would be better off using it as nourishment for the immortal devouring orchid. Afterwards, in order to avoid leaving any traces behind, Jianshin changed the scene into one where vicious beasts had passed by before leaving. When the world of Moon and Star opens, the elders of the Radiant Saint Hall will definitely enter the world of Moon and Star to conduct a thorough search. Jianshin continued on his way with Donglin Yinshui in his arms. Along the way, he found many dwellings occupied by vicious beasts with the senses of his soul. Perhaps it was because of the strange mist, but all the dwellings were empty. The vicious beasts that lived there had already fled far away, and they had yet to return. Clearly, the vicious beasts feared the mist very much. Even after the mist had dispersed, they still did not return. There are quite a few radiant origin pearls in the territories of the vicious beasts. It's just that every single radiant origin pearl has been purposely placed there by the elders of the Sacred Hall. The number of radiant origin pearls is recorded clearly, so I can't take a single one. Jinshin was filled with pity. He could sense pure radiant saint force origin energy within the radiant origin pearls. If he used it for cultivation, it would be extremely beneficial to any radiant saint master. Before long, Donglin Yin Shui finally woke up. As soon as she woke up, Jinshin immediately slowed down. He only used the ability of a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core to travel. As a result, he was naturally as slow as an ant compared to before. This is the world of moon and star. Changyang, how do we make it out of the mist? As soon as she woke up, Donglin Yin Shui asked. I don't know either. I just walked around and came out. The mist was very strange. Its appearance made all the vicious beasts in the world of moon and star very uneasy. Didn't you encounter any danger in there? Donglin Yin Shui was extremely curious. She had fainted very quickly in the mist, so she had no idea what had happened. No, the mist might have been a threat to the vicious beasts, but it shouldn't have targeted us. Jinshin casually brushed it off. The mist was actually a combination of the power of the primeval artifact spirit and the power of the curse. He believed that no one else knew of its existence apart from himself and the sword spirits. The mist shouldn't have been so simple. If I can make it out alive, I'll definitely report this to the elders. Jinshin carried Donglin Yin Shui for an entire day before finding a cave to rest. He acted like he was recovering. Fortunately, we didn't come across any vicious beasts along the way. However, I wonder if the greatest threat, Aoyama, has left or not. I hope he has already left the world of moon and star. In the gloomy cave, Donglin Yinshui leaned against the wall weakly as she sat on the ground. Deep worry filled her face. Due to the appearance of the strange mist, many vicious beasts had fled far away in fright. A very large area of safety had appeared in the world of moon and star. She no longer needed to worry too much about the threat from the vicious beasts. Only Aoyama's existence made her feel uneasy. We should have stayed in the mist for quite some time. The world of moon and star should open soon. Perhaps Aoyama has already left, Jinshan said as he acted like he was recovering nearby. However, his face changed very soon. His powerful soul had already sensed Aoyama's presence. Even though Aoyama did not purposefully radiate with a terrifying presence, he did not hide it at all either. He flew towards Jinshan in a straight line. Oh no, Aoyama is actually still in the world of moon and star. Not only has he not left, but he's even found my exact location. How'd he find us? Jinshin's heart sank. He looked at Donglin Yin Shui nearby, and the light in his eyes flickered. Donglin Yin Shui was still conscious right now. If he struck, he would directly expose himself. He had thought about knocking Donglin Yin Shui unconscious, but once Donglin Yin Shui woke up, she would only need to think about it slightly to expose his strength. After all, Donglin Yin Shui had a peak four-colored soul core. Even though she was heavily injured, she was not someone a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core could knock out so easily. Chapter 2383. Am I really going to be exposed? Jinshan glanced at the oblivious Donglin Yin Shui before looking outside the cave. The light in his eyes flickered as he weighed the pros and cons. However, a sliver of surprise flashed through his eyes soon after. Although he was still 1,000,000 kilometers away from Aoyama, he was like a lantern in the night to Jinshan because Aoyama had failed to conceal his presence. Jinshan could clearly sense his location at all times. However, at this moment, Aoyama had actually stopped 1,000,000 kilometers away from Jinshan. He did not approach them. Aoyama clearly knows our exact location, but he hasn't come over. Instead, he's watching from afar. What is he doing? Jinshan became doubtful about Aoyama's actions. After a moment of hesitation, Jinshan looked at Donglin Yin Shui and said, "Rest here for a while. I'll go observe the surroundings." With that, Jinshan stood up and left the cave. Donglin Yin Shui leaned against the cave wall powerlessly as she stared at Jinshan with mixed feelings. After leaving the cave, Jinshan condensed a pair of radiant wings and arrived 10,000 kilometers away with his cultivation as a radiant saint master. Only then did he erupt with his cultivation as a fighter and unleash his speed, directly flying towards Aoyama's location. He moved extremely quickly, crossing 1,000 kilometers in a single instance. A while later, Jianchun arrived before Aoyama. He stood 100 meters away from him. As for Qin Shan, he was sitting cross-legged on a rock. His body was as lofty as a mountain, giving off an indomitable feeling. Powerful auras revolved around him. "You've come." Aoyama looked at Jianchun calmly. At that moment, he seemed like a dormant volcano. He seemed as calm as water on the surface, but astonishing energy was hidden within. Jianchun frowned slightly. Originally, he thought that an intense battle would continue between him and Aoyama. As a result, he had already mentally prepared himself for another battle with Aoyama. However, when he saw Aoyama again, he actually did not sense any battle intent or killing intent from the Divine King. For a moment, he actually became rather confused about Aoyama's intentions. "You and the candidate, Donglin Yin Shui, have already vanished for 8 months. I have a secret technique that can search for all the Radiant Saint Masters in the entire world of Moon and Star. During this period of time, I searched the entire world of Moon and Star more than once. Let alone Radiant God Kings. Even many elders of the Sacred Hall were unable to avoid my search. However, you and Donglin Yin Shui really have vanished, as if you're no longer in the world of Moon and Star. Only recently did I find traces of you again." Aoyama stared at Jianchun calmly, as if he was studying him closely. Jianchun stood 100 meters away with his hand behind his back. His presence was sharp, as if an invisible sword had condensed around him. He radiated with a cold sword chi. "I never thought that you would actually have a secret technique that can search for all the Radiant Saint Masters in the entire world of Moon and Star. In other words, most of the Radiant Saint Masters who entered the world of Moon and Star have died under your pursuit. Aside from Donglin Yin Shui, who was with you, the other 4 are all dead. I've killed 45 of the 48 Divine King that entered the world of Moon and Star." Aoyama did not know the situation of the Radiant Saint Hall like the back of his hand, but he knew a lot of information. He stared at Jianchun deeply and continued. "Originally, all the candidates and Divine King who entered the world of Moon and Star could forget about leaving alive because I wanted the Radiant Saint Hall to not have a chosen saint this year. That would be an extremely awkward matter to them. It would make them lose a lot of face. However, your existence made me change my mind. It's not like I can't find the other 3 Radiant God Kings. Killing them would be as easy as flipping my hand. It's because of you that I gave up on killing them and spare their lives, allowing them to leave here alive." "Aoyama, we don't know each other, so why did you give up on killing others because of me?" Jianchun asked. Aoyama smiled mysteriously. "It's very simple. If everyone who entered the world of Moon and Star died, only you and Donglin Yin Shui remain alive, it would be a mystery as to why the 2 of you managed to escape from me. The elders and vice leaders will definitely do everything they can to find the reason. Under their investigation, even if you can explain it away, it'll increase the risk. However, if I leave a few more people alive, it'll be even better for you. It'll be able to erase the suspicions the elders have towards you. They'll think that your survival is due to luck." "You're helping me? But why are you helping me?" Jianchun asked in confusion. Aoyama stood up and stared at Jianchun with shining eyes. He said seriously, "Because you're a member of our martial soul lineage. Our martial soul lineage has always been as close as brothers since ancient times. We're family. As long as you possess martial soul force, you'll be a successor of our martial soul lineage regardless of your identity or race. You'll be a person blessed by the heavens. And you possess martial soul force. Even though your martial soul force is extremely weak, it's unable to deny the fact that you're a successor of our martial soul lineage. As a result, not only are we not enemies, but we're also fellow disciples who look after each other wholeheartedly." Aoyama's answer surprised Jianchun. He knew he possessed martial soul force, but he had never thought that the martial soul lineage would actually possess such a secret. "That's a little too absurd. Although I possess martial soul force, I have nothing to do with your martial soul lineage, Jianshan said. You're wrong. Every single person who possesses martial soul force is born from the world. This is just like Radiant Saint Masters. Whether a person has the potential to become a Radiant Saint Master is determined the moment they're born. If they do, then they do. If they don't, then they don't. Unlike fighters, who can start off as mortals and cultivate step by step, even mortals without any talent can be modified and raised through various heavenly resources and various methods. As a result, there's a saying that Radiant Saint Masters are born from the world. The same principle applies to us, martial soul force. However, the birth of martial soul force is countless times more difficult than the birth of Radiant Saint Masters. Every single person who possesses martial soul force is an existence blessed by the heavens. In every generation, it's impossible for the number of people who possess martial soul force to reach the double digits. It's exactly because there are so few people in our martial soul lineage that were protected by the will of the heavens. The laws of the world form a special law, allowing every single person who possesses martial soul force to follow the guidance of the will of the heavens and walk together in the end. In the beginning, I, Aoyama, was the same as you. I cultivated alone and wandered the saints' world by myself. But in the end, I entered the martial soul mountain by coincidence. It's not just me. Even the other seniors of our martial soul mountain, as well as the deceased seniors of our martial soul lineage, have all become members of the martial soul mountain through various methods. There have been no exceptions throughout history. Chapter 2384. I'm wanted by many powerful existences right now. Aren't you afraid that I'll bring you trouble if you make me a member of the martial soul lineage? Jianshan asked. He knew that Aoyama would understand what he was implying and the karma involved. With Aoyama's intelligence, he had already learned Jianshan's true identity when he fought Jianshan. Although our martial soul lineage can't become a grand prime, you can't underestimate us. Although our martial soul lineage only has 7 people, we don't fear any of the experts on the desolate plain aside from the Celestial Sword Saint. No one can threaten us. Even if the peak experts work together, we can defend the martial soul mountain. As long as we stay on the martial soul mountain, even the Celestial Sword Saint won't be able to do anything to us. Let alone the Celestial Sword Saint. Even existences slightly more powerful than the Celestial Sword Saint can't enter the martial soul mountain. As a result, in my opinion, you're in dire straits now that you're surrounded by so many peak experts with the Inata Tower. Even if you flee from the desolate plain, they'll search for you endlessly. However, as long as you enter the martial soul mountain, they won't be able to do anything to you. Aoyama swore confidently. He was filled with confidence. Is the martial soul mountain that powerful? Can a Celestial Sword Saint, or even existences even more powerful than the Celestial Sword Saint, stop them? Jianshan was surprised. The Celestial Sword Saint was a powerful existence that even the Azure Pung King dared not set foot on the desolate plain. The martial soul mountain is where our martial soul lineage resides. It's exactly because of the martial soul mountain that our martial soul lineage can exist for all eternity in the saint's world, never facing destruction. The only flaw is that the martial soul mountain can only serve as the final defense of our martial soul lineage, protecting us from extinction. It can't help us conquer the world. Aoyama looked at Jianshan with undisguised admiration and admiration. He continued, I know you hid your identity and entered the Radiant Saint Hall, and you protected Donglin Yin Shui in the trial to enter the Tower of Radiance. Indeed, the Tower of Radiance is a supreme treasure of the Radiant Saint Hall. It was left behind by a sovereign of the world who had reached grand exalt in the history of the Radiant Saint Hall. It contains the great fortune of Radiant Saint Masters. All the cultivation methods and radiant arts in the outside world come from the Tower of Radiance. As a matter of fact, even the knowledge of the leader and vice leader of the Radiant Saint Hall comes from the Tower of Radiance. The Tower of Radiance is an endless treasure trove to any hallowed Saint Master. It can change their fate. But I have to tell you that the major forces that have gathered in the barren state have already begun searching for your whereabouts through blood tests. Under the joint efforts of the top experts from all over the Barren State, no one in the Barren State will be able to escape this, no matter who they are. As a result, as long as you remain on the desolate plain, you'll be discovered sooner or later. If you return to the Radiant Saint Hall with Donglin Yin Shui, you'll face the risk of your identity being exposed. Once your identity is exposed, I think you understand what kind of outcome awaits you. Do you have a better way for me to enter the Tower of Radiance? Jianshan remained calm. He had already expected this. Our martial soul lineage is on opposing sides with the Radiant Saint Hall. This is the enmity that has been accumulated from generation to generation. It's irreconcilable now, so I can't help you enter the Tower of Radiance. However, you're the 8th successor of the martial soul lineage. What you should truly grasp is martial soul force, and not the cultivation methods in the Tower of Radiance. Although some of the cultivation methods in the Tower of Radiance are extremely powerful, where they could be described as earth-shaking, you're not a regular hallowed Saint Master after all. You're a successor of the martial soul lineage. Even if you obtain the most powerful cultivation method in the Tower of Radiance, you won't be able to break through to Grand Prime. As a result, there's no need for you to take the risk and enter the Tower of Radiance. Leaving with me and returning to the Martial Soul Mountain is the safest and most reliable choice. Aoyama stared at Jianshan with shining eyes as he tried his best to convince him. The Martial Soul Mountain possesses the various cultivation methods and comprehensions passed down by the past seniors of our martial soul lineage. They're the most precious treasures of our martial soul mountain. They can allow you to gain a clearer understanding of martial soul force and grasp how to make it grow. Return to the martial soul mountain with me, and you can use the resources as much as you want. Jianshan was immediately tempted. He had never found a suitable cultivation method to practice his martial soul force, so it remained in its initial state. It was so weak that it was unable to affect any of the divine kings at all. It was not that he had never thought about creating a cultivation method for martial soul force. However, creating a cultivation method required a very long period of time. It was definitely not as simple as just talking about it. He had only experienced an extremely short amount of time ever since he had matured. It had only been a few hundred years, and he had basically spent all that time on increasing his chaotic body and laws of the sword. He did not have any extra time or energy to create a cultivation method for martial soul force. As a result, his martial soul force had always been set aside. It had not improved at all. Now that Aoyama had appeared, Jianshan had finally found an opportunity for his martial soul force to grow. Naturally, he was tempted. However, in the end, he shook his head gently and refused to leave with Aoyama. I hid in the Radiant Saint Hall and spent so much effort just to enter the Tower of Radiance. Now that I'm only a step away from the Tower of Radiance, how can I give up halfway? I won't give up on the Tower of Radiance. Seeing how Jianshan had made up his mind, Aoyama did not try to persuade him any further. He said, I'll teach you a method. When you come to the Martial Soul Mountain, you can use this method to sense the location of the Martial Soul Mountain. Our Martial Soul Mountain is not on the 49 Great Plains or the 81 Great Planets. Instead, it drifts through the endless cosmos. With your strength, it'll be very difficult to find the Martial Soul Mountain without an accurate location. There are very few people in our martial soul lineage. Every addition is a huge matter to us, so I need to let my 6 seniors know about your appearance as soon as possible. As for martial soul force, it's a legacy of a mental imprint. Only the Martial Soul Mountain can accept it, so I can't help you. With that, Aoyama left. He used a special method to rip open the space of the world of Moon and Star, creating a spatial tunnel and vanishing from there. Chapter 2385. Donglin Yanshui sat alone in the gloomy cave. She leaned against the wall weakly as she stared at the entrance of the cave. Jinshan's departure left only Donglin Yanshui in the cave. Injured, she had basically lost the ability to protect herself, so she immediately became nervous and uneasy. She also felt a strong sense of unease. In a daze, Donglin Yin Shui could not help but think about how Jianshan had carried her in his arms as they fled for their lives in the world of moon and star that was filled with danger. Faced with Aoyama's pursuit, the 8 divine king that she relied on the most had abandoned her without any hesitation at all. He fled alone, leaving her all alone. However, Chang Yang, who was clearly the weakest, remained by her side the entire time. Even when she had become a burden now, he still did not abandon her, going through life and death with her. Donglin Yin Shui was deeply moved by this. After this matter, Donglin Yin Shui truly understood what kind of person Jianshan was. At this moment, a series of footsteps rang out from outside. Donglin Yin Shui immediately tensed up and called out, "Who is it?" "It's me." Jianshan's voice rang out from outside the cave. With that, he entered the cave. Donglin Yin Shui immediately let out a sigh of relief when she heard Jianshan's voice. She asked, "What's the situation outside?" "It's peaceful." Jianshan sat down where he had been before. The light in his eyes flickered as he said in thought, "The strange mist has scared away all the vicious beasts. Even though the mist has vanished, the vicious beasts are still afraid to return to their territories. As a result, I didn't come across a single vicious beast when I passed by. We've been trapped in the mist for a very long time. Although I don't know exactly how much time has passed, I'm guessing that the 1-year period should be over. The gate to the world of moon and star will open again very soon. We just need to wait here quietly. But our greatest threat isn't the vicious beasts. It's Aoyama." Donglin Yin Shui was unable to cheer up at all. She had already given up on searching for radiant origin pearls now. She only wanted to leave this place safely. Aoyama might have already left the world of moon and star. After all, so much time has passed. If he doesn't leave now, he'll probably be done for once the gateway opens and the elders of the Radiant Saint Hall pour out, Jianshan said calmly. "That's just your guess. And what if Aoyama hasn't left?" "Chang Yang, I think it's safer if we hide further away." Donglin Yin Shui was worried. "All right then, let's continue on our way." Jianshan was helpless. In order to avoid Donglin Yin Shui's suspicions, he could only continue flying further away with Donglin Yin Shui in his arms. Now, Donglin Yin Shui was no longer as resistant to Jianshan as before. When Jianshan carried her, she actually experienced a strange feeling. Time passed silently. Unknowingly, a year had passed since the trial of the 5 candidates had ended. Over a dozen elders stood in a row in the sacred hall of the Radiant Saint Hall with Elder Mu Zhong at the lead. They stood in an imposing manner on the stage. Of course, as a peak organization that stood on the desolate plain, the Radiant Saint Hall definitely possessed more than that. The elders on the stage right now were only a portion of them. Below the stage gathered the lords of the various peaks, as well as a few hallowed saint masters who were not the divine king, but possessed extraordinary statuses. To no surprise, Jianshan's junior sister, Baiyu, was one of them. A year has finally passed. Senior brother is finally going to emerge from the world of moon and star. I wonder what kind of world it is. Once he comes out, I have to ask him properly. Baiyu stood among the crowd as she stared at Elder Mu Zhong. Her face was filled with eagerness and slight excitement. I now announce that the 1-year trial of the world of moon and star has officially ended. Of the 5 candidates who participated in the trial, which 3 will be eliminated will be decided by the radiant origin pearls they obtain. Now, open the gateway to the world of moon and star. With Elder Mu Zhong's call, the ancient seal in his hand immediately pulsed with powerful energy. He swung at the sky, and the space there immediately pulsed. It twisted and formed a gateway. The gateway to the world of moon and star has already been opened. Why haven't the candidates returned yet? Elder Mu Zhong called out. His old voice boomed through the gateway, echoing through the world of moon and star and echoing through 1,000,000 kilometers. Elder Mu Zhong was the most senior elder in the Radiant Saint Hall. Not only was he respected, but he was also one of the 3 most powerful people among the elders. He was equivalent to a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime among fighters. His status was only second to the 8 vice leaders. With the opening of the gateway, all the radiant god kings gathered below the stage looked towards the gateway in the sky as they discussed among themselves. It's finally over. I just wonder which 2 out of the 5 candidates, Jianshin, Bin, Shurda, and Donglin Yin Shui, will advance to the next round and compete for the position of Chosen Saint. Does it even need to be said? It'll definitely be Jianshin and Bin. After all, the two of them reached late 4-colored Soul Core, first out of the 5 candidates. That's not necessarily the case. Although Jianshin and Bin were the first to reach late 4-colored Soul Core, and Shurda aren't weak either. They also have late 4-colored Soul Cores. How can you forget about Donglin Yin Shui? Don't forget that Donglin Yin Shui's strength soared in the last 2 years. She basically broke through a minor level of cultivation every year. In just 2 short years, she went from early 4-colored Soul Core to late 4-colored Soul Core. That's completely unreasonable. Donglin Yin Shui's sudden increase in strength is probably due to some external help. Her foundation is nowhere near as solid as Jianshin and Bin's. The two of them can't be compared. Don't forget that there's still Changyang by Donglin Yin Shui's side. Although Changyang's cultivation is low, he's a subordinate of Vice Leader Xianzhan. Who knows what trump cards he's hiding? If he assists Donglin Yin Shui with his full strength, who knows who among the 5 candidates will be able to achieve an outstanding result in the first round? As they waited silently, the many Radiant God Kings began an intense discussion around the 5 candidates. The dozen or so temple elders in the arena also turned their gazes towards the world of Moon and Star's realm gate with anticipation. Time passed, second by second. The gate to the world of Moon and Star opened wide, but unexpectedly, no one came out from inside. Something's wrong. Elder Mu Zhong frowned. His old eyes shone with light as he stared fixedly at the gate of the world of Moon and Star. Such an abnormal scene made him feel uneasy. Elder Lu Shui, Elder Xiaofeng, the two of you enter the world of Moon and Star quickly to check on the situation. Elder Mu Zhong called out to the 2 elders beside him. Immediately, the 2 elders flew into the air. The laws of the hallowed descended, and with a flash, they vanished into the gateway. At this moment, the peak masters gathered around the arena seemed to have realized that something was wrong. They all became quiet and stared at the world of Moon and Star's world gate without blinking. Very soon, Elder Lu Shui and Elder Xiaofeng returned. The two of them landed on the ring with ugly expressions and said with a heavy voice, "This is bad. We can't sense Elder He Tian's presence, and we found traces of battle and blood from Elder He Tian nearby. Elder He Tian is most likely dead." Chapter 2386. Elder Mu Zhong was not the only one. Even the other elders on the stage had lost their usual indifference at this moment. All of their faces had become extremely ugly, and their faces were filled with graveness. That's impossible. We've already cleared out all the vicious beasts in the world of Moon and Star. We've slain all the primordial realm vicious beasts, leaving behind only a few existences at the level of the Divine King. It's impossible for these vicious beasts to pose a threat to He Tian. That's right. It's impossible for the vicious beasts in the world of Moon and Star to pose a threat to He Tian. Even if a vicious beast breaks through and reaches the primordial realm, it's impossible for them to be He Tian's opponent. What has happened in the world of Moon and Star? Why haven't we received any messages from Elder He Tian? Has something happened in the world of Moon and Star such that even Elder He Tian was unable to contact us in time? Oh no, the 5 candidates are still in the world of Moon and Star. In the arena, many elders shouted one after another. Their expressions changed rapidly and became extremely solemn. They had a bad premonition in their hearts. All elders enter the world of Moon and Star. Even if you have to dig deep, you have to find out what has happened. Search the entire world of Moon and Star. You have to find the candidates participating in the trial. If they're alive, I want to see them. If they're dead, I want to see their corpses. Go! Elder Mu Zhong bellowed out. His face was ashen, and he had basically flown into a rage. The chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall was chosen once every 1,000 years. This was an ancient tradition that had lasted for countless years. Now that all the candidates had entered the world of Moon and Star to undergo the trial, the final chosen saint would be chosen. If the 5 of them all met with misfortune in the world of Moon and Star, would that not mean that the Radiant Saint Hall would not have a chosen saint this time? Although this would not affect the Radiant Saint Hall's strength at all, the Radiant Saint Hall was a famed peak organization on the desolate plain after all. If they really ended up in an awkward situation where they did not have a chosen saint, it would be an extremely humiliating matter for the Radiant Saint Hall. Immediately, apart from Elder Mu Zhong, all the elders on the stage entered the world of Moon and Star. The huge square immediately fell silent. All the Divine King gathered here realized that something unexpected had probably happened in the world of Moon and Star this time. They all stood below the ring and waited silently. The atmosphere was rather oppressive. Before long, 2 elders flew out from the gateway of the world of Moon and Star. One of them held a bloody corpse in his hand. They carefully placed the body on the stage and said with grief and indignation, "Elder He Tian has fallen." The corpse was none other than Elder He Tian, who had guarded the world of Moon and Star as the final line of defense for the 5 candidates participating in the trial. Oh no! Elder Mu Zhong's heart sank when he saw Elder He Tian's body. His old face became extremely stern, and he immediately sent a strand of his soul into the depths of the sacred hall. Very soon, several temple elders flew out from within and landed on the stage. The elders wore black clothes. Their faces were cold, and their eyes shone with cold light. They were the upper echelon of the disciplinary hall and disciplinary hall. It's martial soul force. Elder He Tian has been killed by someone from the martial soul lineage. From the wounds, it's probably Aoyama from the martial soul lineage. Out of the 7 people from the martial soul lineage, only Aoyama could fight against He Tian for so long before killing him. The upper echelon of the disciplinary hall and disciplinary hall said emotionlessly. Their voices were cold, and their eyes shone with heavy killing intent. Another elder of our Radiant Saint Hall has died to Aoyama's hands. Let's go and investigate the world of Moon and Star carefully, said an elder of the disciplinary hall sternly. Aoyama has committed heinous crimes. We can't spare him. The elders of the disciplinary hall and disciplinary hall also entered the world of Moon and Star as their killing intent surged. It was also at this moment that elders constantly entered and exited the world of Moon and Star, bringing out corpses one after another. These corpses all belonged to the Divine King of Light. He was one of the protectors of the 5 candidates, and they had all died to Aoyama's hands. The corpses were originally scattered across the world of Moon and Star, but under the personal search of the elders of the Radiant Saint Hall, they found them one by one. Elder Mu Zhong's face became even more sunken as he watched more and more corpses pile up on stage. Fury and terrifying killing intent surged in his heart. Giant Shin is dead. At this moment, another elder flew out of the world gate with a corpse. He was heavy-hearted. To no surprise, the corpse belonged to one of the 5 candidates, Giant Shin. Heavens, it's actually Giant Shin. Giant Shin is actually dead. The news of Giant Shin's death immediately caused an uproar below the stage. Senior brother, you have to be safe. You have to come back alive. Bai Yu paled in the crowd. She clenched her fists tightly as she prayed inside. She was filled with worry. Everyone could tell that something huge had happened to the world of Moon and Star this time. Even she could not guarantee that her senior brother would make it out alive. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings. 2 figures appeared silently on the stage. They were Xianzhan and Mo He of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall. Greetings to the vice leaders. Their appearance immediately caused all the Radiant God Kings below to bow. Even Elder Mu Zhong did the same as everyone else, bowing. Xianzhan and Mo He stared at the corpses on the stage without blinking at all. Their faces were sunken. The vice leaders were supreme figures in the Radiant Saint Hall. They rarely showed themselves. Even something as important as the selection of the chosen saint was completely left to the elders. The vice leaders would not interfere personally. At most, they would observe from behind the scenes. But now, with so many guardians dying, as well as the prospective saint's death, even the high and mighty vice palace master was alarmed. At this moment, many elders radiated with powerful presences in the world of moon and star. They flew through the air with lightning-like speed. Powerful senses of the soul pierced through the sky and ground, sweeping through the entire world of moon and star. All the ferocious beasts that lived in the world of moon and star, regardless of whether they were strong or weak, were all cowering in their own caves, trembling in fear. Chapter 2387. Now, Donglin Yinshui had gradually calmed down from her initial uneasiness. Aoyama had not found her after all this time, so she firmly believed that Aoyama had already left. She firmly believed that she could leave this place alive. Changyang, how much longer until the 1-year period ends? Donglin Yinshui asked gently. Jianshin had always been by her side during the year of hardship. He had truly gone through life and death with her, which made Donglin Yinshui develop a special feeling for Jianshin. As a matter of fact, she even developed a slight reliance on him. It should be soon, Jianshin said leisurely. He remained composed the entire time. This was something he showed naturally. However, he had no idea that the presence he had unconsciously displayed had instead established a great figure in Donglin Yinshui's heart. At this moment, the cave where Jianshin and Donglin Yinshui hid suddenly shook violently. The thick layer of soil above them was suddenly blown away by a powerful force. Powerful radiant saint force shone with extremely bright light, causing the gloomy cave to become as bright as day in a single instance. High up in the sky, a middle-aged woman wearing a white robe was floating in the air, looking down from a high vantage point. Even though she was currently high and mighty, she did not reveal the slightest trace of arrogance. Instead, her gaze was tightly fixed on the ground below, and she clearly breathed a sigh of relief. Master! Donglin Yinshui raised her head instinctively. When she saw the middle-aged woman hovering in the sky, she immediately became excited. She cried out and wanted to stand up. However, she had yet to recover from her wounds, so she had already lost the ability to move. Not only did she fail to stand up, but she even staggered and almost fell over. Fortunately, Jianshin reacted quickly and caught her in time. The middle-aged woman was one of the elders of the Radiant Saint Hall, as well as Donglin Yinshui's master, Mu Shui. With a flash, Mu Shui appeared before Donglin Yinshui in a single instance. She was unable to contain her excitement as she said in joy, "It's good that you're alive. It's good that you're alive." I thought. As if Donglin Yinshui had found her only support, she hugged Mu Shui tightly and said with a sobbing voice, "Master, Aoyama of the martial soul lineage appeared soon after we entered the world of moon and star. He hunted us down, so I thought I would never see you again." "I know. Yinshui, you don't have to be afraid now. We've already sent many elders into the world of moon and star. They're searching for Aoyama everywhere. Once we find Aoyama, he'll definitely die," Mu Shui said softly. Mu Shui said gently, but Jianshin could clearly hear the heavy, killing intent in her voice. Clearly, this was killing intent targeted towards Aoyama. Not only had Aoyama ruined the once-in-a-millennium selection of Chosen Saint of the Radiant Saint Hall when he barged into the world of moon and star this time, he had even caused heavy casualties to the 5 candidates. This had already infuriated the Radiant Saint Hall. "Let's go. You're heavily injured, but you'll recover very quickly once we return to the Sacred Hall," Mu Shui said to Donglin Yinshui. Afterwards, she glanced at the silent Jianshin who stood to one side. She became slightly friendlier. "Changyang, thank you for taking care of Yinshui during these birthdays." Afterwards, Jianshin and Donglin Yinshui left the world of moon and star under Mu Shui's lead, returning to the Radiant Saint Hall. Many corpses had already piled up on the huge stage in the Radiant Saint Hall. Not only were there over 30 Divine King corpses, but there were even 3 corpses of candidates. Out of the 5 candidates, Jianshin, Shida, and Nda were completely dead. Only Donglin Yinshui and Xianbin's fates remained unknown. At this moment, the atmosphere in the huge Radiant Saint Hall was extremely stifling. Even the two vice leaders, Xianzhan and Mo He, had pale white faces. At this moment, another elder flew out of the world of moon and star with a corpse. He gently placed the corpse on the stage and said with a pained expression, "Xian Bin is dead as well." Xianzhan and Mo He's gazes sharpened at that moment. At that moment, everyone could clearly sense a terrifying killing intent that could devastate the world brew within the two vice leaders. However, Elder Mu Zhong's face became extremely sorrowful. He murmured in a daze, "For the 5 candidates have already died. It looks like something has happened to Donglin Yin Shui as well. Is our Radiant Saint Hall really going to be without a chosen saint this time?" No, not all of the 5 candidates are dead. At this moment, a voice rang out from the gateway. The elder, Mu Shui, flew out. Beside her were Jianshan and Donglin Yin Shui, who were surrounded by Radiant Saint Force. Yin Shui is still alive. Mu Shui directly arrived on the stage with Jianshan and Donglin Yin Shui. The Radiant Saint Force dispersed, and Jianshan and Donglin Yin Shui were immediately exposed before everyone. As soon as he saw Donglin Yin Shui, Elder Mu Zhong's despair-filled eyes immediately lit up with a wondrous light again. Even Vice Hall Master Xianzhan and Mo He's expressions softened a little. Clearly, in their eyes, the loss of the Divine King was nowhere near as valuable as a candidate. After all, once the Radiant Saint Hall lost a chosen saint, the ancient tradition that had lasted for countless years would be broken in this generation. The loss of face to the Radiant Saint Hall would be immeasurable. Before long, the elders found a second group of survivors after Jianshan and Donglin Yin Shui. They were the 3 Divine King of Radiant Saint Hall. They hid extremely far away in the world of moon and star, so they managed to avoid the disaster. Of course, the 3 of them only managed to survive because Aoyama had purposefully spared them. He wanted to reduce the suspicion towards Jianshan and Donglin Yin Shui's survival. Afterwards, the world of moon and star was completely handed over to the experts of the Disciplinary Hall and Disciplinary Hall to investigate. They wanted to find how Aoyama had entered the world of moon and star. As for Jianshan and Donglin Yin Shui, as well as the 3 other Divine King of Radiant Saint Hall, elders personally want to find them to understand the situation. Chapter 2388. Jianshan only had a 1-colored soul core, so they naturally did not ask him too much. The elders all believed that the 3 surviving Divine King were the ones who could help them understand the situation better. Fantastic. Second senior brother, you've actually made it out of the world of moon and star alive. You have no idea. I saw so many powerful lords of the various peaks die in the world of moon and star, so I thought even you would not be able to survive. As soon as Jianshan emerged from the sacred hall, Baiyu immediately appeared beside him. Her delicate and beautiful face was filled with lingering fear. All right, second senior brother, what happened in the world of moon and star? Did you really come across Aoyama of the martial soul lineage? Baiyu raised her head slightly as she looked at Jianshan. Her eyes were filled with curiosity. Why do you care about that? You better cultivate properly. Becoming stronger as soon as possible is the most important thing. I'm just curious. Second senior brother, just tell me. Originally, the trial in the world of moon and star was only the first step to the competition between the candidates. In this step, the candidates would obtain the most radiant origin pearls and directly eliminate 3 of them. Only 2 candidates would emerge victorious in the end. The second step was for the 2 remaining candidates to continue competing and decide on the final candidate. Only then would it come to a perfect conclusion. However, due to the sudden changes in the world of moon and star, only Donglin Yin Shui survived out of the 5 candidates. As a result, Donglin Yin Shui became the only candidate in the Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, the second step was naturally nullified. As a result, Donglin Yin Shui formally became the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall. Once she became the chosen saint, not only would her status increase, but she would also receive the full support of the Radiant Saint Hall for the next 1,000 years. As a result, the position of chosen saint was an irresistible temptation to all Radiant Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall. It was an opportunity for them to undergo a drastic metamorphosis. Under the assistance of the elders, Donglin Yin Shui recovered from her wounds in less than a day. 3 days later, the grand ceremony for the chosen saint officially took place. When Donglin Yin Shui became the chosen saint, Jianchen had already returned to the soaring clouds peak. He sat there as he stared at the sacred hall that stood above the clouds in the distance. His eyes were deep. Basically, 99% of the low-level Radiant Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall have had their blood tested and obtained a blood medallion as an identity medallion. The examination of the blood medallion in the Radiant Saint Hall is becoming stricter and stricter, so it's gradually becoming an identity medallion. It looks like I really don't have much time left in the Radiant Saint Hall, Jianshan thought as he sat on a large rock outside his dwelling. His comprehension of the laws of space had already reached the God King realm, so his understanding of space was extremely deep. Even without using the power of his soul, he could still see through the clouds with his naked eye and see the scene 1,000,000 kilometers away. As a result, although he did not take a single step away from the soaring clouds peak in the past 3 days, many things that happened in the Radiant Saint Hall could not be hidden from him. He could clearly see the blood medallions on all the Radiant Saint Masters. He could also clearly see the envoys of the Radiant Saint Hall inspecting the blood medallions of all the low-level Radiant Saint Masters under the supervision of the cultivators from outside. Anyone who had not undergone the blood test would be forcefully taken away regardless of their identity or background. At that moment, he truly felt a sense of urgency. He was running out of time. At this moment, Jianshan's face changed slightly. He saw 3 envoys in black robes and a cultivator in azure robes in the distance. They directly made their way to the soaring clouds peak. Jianshan was extremely familiar with this group of people. They were one of the groups responsible for inspecting the blood medallions. I can't run into them. Jianshan quickly made up his mind. He floated down from the rock and concealed his presence. He left through the back of the soaring clouds peak to avoid them. Soon after Jianshan's departure, the group of 4 arrived outside the soaring clouds peak. One of the envoys asked, "Is the disciple of the soaring clouds peak, Changyang, present? Why are you looking for senior brother?" At this moment, a white streak of light shot over and stopped before the 4 of them, revealing Baiyu. Baiyu had just come down from the sacred hall and was about to come to the soaring clouds peak to find Jianshan, but she just happened to come across the group of enforcers. "Changyang still hasn't undergone the blood test, so we've obviously come to carry out our duties," said one of the envoys. "Oh, I just happen to want to discuss my experiences with senior brother as well. Let's go together." Baiyu nodded and appeared before Jianshan's dwelling with the 4 envoys. Baiyu directly touched the formation outside the dwelling and called for Jianshan from outside. Obviously, she received no reply. Strange. Is senior brother not on the soaring clouds peak? Or is he cultivating in seclusion? A while later, Baiyu frowned and murmured to herself. The 3 envoys and the outsider only stood nearby, quietly. They did not become impatient at all. If that's the case, let's wait here. All the disciples below the Divine King in the Radiant Saint Hall have undergone the blood test. "We're only missing Changyang," said one of the envoys. In the past, they definitely would not have had the patience to wait here. As a matter of fact, they would have broken through the formation and forced their way in. However, ever since Jianshan's identity as Vice Leader Xianzhang's medallion was exposed a year ago, his status in the Radiant Saint Hall had changed. These envoys naturally would not offend Jianshan over such a small matter. Jianshan hid in the clouds several dozen kilometers away. He saw everything that happened on the soaring clouds peak clearly. With his powerful senses, he heard everything the envoys said. His face immediately became stern. "I never thought that I would be the last one. I can't return to the soaring clouds peak either," Jianshan thought to himself. Jianshan frowned. After a moment of thought, he suddenly looked at the sacred hall that stood above the clouds. Afterwards, he took off and flew towards the sacred hall. When Jianshan arrived at the sacred hall, the ceremony for Donglin Yin Shui's coronation had already ended. The lords of the various peaks gathered on the square had all dispersed. Jian Shun held Vice Leader Xian Zhan's medallion and moved through the heavily guarded sacred hall without any obstructions. He directly found Donglin Yin Shui's temporary residence. Even peak lords were forbidden from approaching where the chosen saint lived without permission. However, with Jinshin's medallion, he could even see Vice Leader Xian Zhan at any time, let alone where the chosen saint lived. It had to be mentioned that after becoming the chosen saint, Donglin Yin Shui's treatment had clearly improved. 2 female disciples stood to the left and right of her temporary residence, awaiting her orders at all times. Chapter 2389. But this is the residence of Her Highness. The 2 female attendants at the entrance were troubled. They had no idea how to turn him down. The 2 of them were hallowed saint masters with 5 colored soul cores. They were equivalent to gods, but Chang Yang, who only had a 1-colored soul core, was extremely cautious. They were afraid of offending him. Clearly, they knew that although Jinshin's cultivation was low, he had the support of a vice leader. His status was extraordinary. At this moment, the door to the residence opened, and Donglin Yin Shui walked out slowly in her attire. She looked at Jinshin outside, and a sliver of mixed feelings flashed through her eyes. After a moment of hesitation, she sent the 2 female attendants away and said softly, "Chang Yang, come in." With that, Donglin Yin Shui turned around and left. However, the moment she turned around, her face became slightly unnatural, but it vanished very soon. Jianshun did not think too much about it. He directly entered Donglin Yin Shui's residence and closed the door behind him. "Why'd you come to find me?" The light in Donglin Yin Shui's dark eyes flickered as she looked at Jianshin. "When can I enter the Tower of Radiance?" Jianshin directly asked. "Have you come to find me just for the Tower of Radiance? Is there nothing else?" Donglin Yin Shui stared straight at Jianshin and replied with a question. "The Tower of Radiance is extremely important to me because the cultivation methods and comprehensions of the seniors in there will directly affect my future accomplishments. As a result, if possible, I hope to enter the Tower of Radiance as soon as possible," Jianshin said seriously. "Is the Tower of Radiance the only thing in your eyes?" A sliver of disappointment flashed through Donglin Yin Shui's eyes. Jianshin was slightly surprised by that. He glanced at Donglin Yin Shui deeply and said, "Indeed, in order to obtain a spot to enter the Tower of Radiance, you must know just how much effort I've put in." "Chang Yang," Donglin Yin Shui called out. She stared at Jianshin closely with her limpid eyes, and her voice became slightly louder. She said rather hurriedly, "I really don't understand. You clearly have the Vice Leader's medallion. If you want to enter the Tower of Radiance, you can ask the Vice Leader to open it for you. Although other Vice Leaders will face some resistance when they want to open the Tower of Radiance, Vice Leader Xian Zhan's status in the Radiant Saint Hall is only a single person of his will be able to open it. Since you're in such a hurry to enter the Tower of Radiance, why are you looking for me, of all places? You've even taken out an extremely precious pure soul. I only obtained Vice Leader Xian Zhan's medallion a few days before the world of Moon and Star opened. At the same time, I don't want to Vice Leader Xian Zhan too much. As a result, even though I know Vice Leader Xian Zhan can directly let me into the Tower of Radiance, I don't want to trouble him. I want to obtain a spot to enter through my own efforts," said Jianshin. Donglin Yin Shui looked at Jianshin with mixed feelings. For a moment, she actually said nothing. Even though Jianshin's current appearance was a common face that had been altered by a mask, the type that would not raise any attention at all if he was thrown into a crowd, his common face had already left a great impression in Donglin Yin Shui's heart. A person's beauty was not determined by their appearance. Instead, it was determined by their heart. Only when a person's heart was beautiful could they be regarded as truly beautiful. However, Jinshin's behavior in the world of Moon and Star seemed to have allowed Donglin Yin Shui to truly see his heart. As a result, he was a tall, handsome, and extraordinary figure in Donglin Yin Shui's heart. A while later, Donglin Yin Shui sighed gently. A faint sense of disappointment silently permeated her heart. In half a month, I will be using the privilege to open the Tower of Radiance. I'll send someone to contact you then. Half a month? Jianshin frowned when he heard that. He said, "That's too long. Can you do it earlier?" The sooner, the better. It's best if it's tomorrow. Tomorrow? Why are you in such a hurry? Donglin Yinxue was surprised. Yeah, because of some reasons, it's rather urgent. Donglin Yinxue, just treat it as you helping me out this time. I will remember this favor, Jianshin said seriously. Donglin Yinxue was actually unable to turn down Jianshin at all when she saw how stern he was. She said, "All right, tomorrow it is." Donglin Yinxue set the schedule for the opening of the Tower of Radiance just like that. The next day, the sun rose. It was fiery, dyeing the clouds and mist in the mountains red. On the highest floor of the Radiant Saint Hall, a group of people stood before a tower that was only a few hundred meters tall. Donglin Yinxue led the group of people to stand there quietly. To no surprise, Jianshun was among them as well. Aside from him, there were 8 other Divine King of Radiance. They stood in a line with Jianshun, standing behind Donglin Yinxue silently. The 8 Divine King of Radiance were the new protectors that Donglin Yinxue had chosen. During the 1,000 years since Donglin Yinxue had become the chosen saint, the protectors had taken the protection of the chosen saint as their mission. They were completely under Donglin Yinxue's lead, and they would listen to her orders. Jianshan raised his head slightly and studied the white tower before him curiously. The white tower was naturally the treasure of the Radiant Saint Hall, the Tower of Radiance. Its entire body was silvery white, and it seemed to have a natural beauty. No one could find the slightest flaw on it. Although it was a powerful treasure left behind by a Grand Exalt, it did not give off any pressure at all. As a result, Jianshin and the others were unable to connect it to a Grand Exalt when they stood before it. Don't underestimate this place. As the highest floor of the Sacred Hall, the entire space here is filled with supreme formations. It said that the previous leaders went through great difficulty to get the Grand Exalt of Ancient Paths to cast down a Grand Exalt level formation. It keeps the Tower of Radiance firmly locked here and prevents any experts from coveting the Tower of Radiance. Donglin Yinxue's voice rang out in Jianshin's head. Jianshin nodded slightly. He studied every inch of space carefully. Indeed, he discovered that there seemed to be a shocking formation around the Tower of Radiance. The formation was extremely well hidden. If it were not for the fact that Jianshin's soul had mutated due to the fusion of chaotic force, he would not have been able to sense its existence at all. Donglin Yinxue, have you thought it through? Do you really want to open the Tower of Radiance at a time like this? The privilege of opening the Tower of Radiance will be reduced every time you use it. At this moment, Elder Mu Zhong appeared silently. He stared at Donglin Yinxue with shining eyes. Esteemed Elder Mu Zhong, Yinxue has already made up her mind. She will officially use the privilege of opening the Tower of Radiance, Donglin Yinxue said without any hesitation. Elder Mu Zhong nodded and said nothing more. In the next moment, the 2 tremendous and terrifying energies turned into torrents that descended from space. They poured into the Tower of Radiance with terrifying pressure. The Tower of Radiance immediately shone brightly. Vaguely, the Grand Exalt's formation around the Tower of Radiance seemed to change slowly, causing the invisible formation that blocked the entrance to the Tower of Radiance to disperse like water, revealing the entrance to the Tower of Radiance. Vice Leader Xianzhan and Vice Leader Mo, he have already opened the Tower of Radiance for you. Hurry up and get in. Elder Mu Zhong shouted. Chapter 2390. With Elder Mu Zhong's call, Donglin Yinxue immediately made her way towards the Tower of Radiance. Very soon, she vanished through the entrance. After Donglin Yinxue, the 8 protectors who had been chosen temporarily arrived. They were all devout as they entered in a single line. As Jianshan was the weakest person here, he was naturally the last one to enter. He's in such a hurry to enter the Tower of Radiance with a one-colored soul core. It looks like this child is an impatient person. It'll be difficult for him to amount to anything great in the future with a mindset like that. Elder Mu Zhong stared at Jianshan's figure as he gradually vanished into the Tower of Radiance. He secretly shook his head. The Tower of Radiance was a hazy, gray world. It was difficult to see. A faint, gray mist permeated the entire space, obstructing one's vision. He could only see 100 meters away. The ground below him was desolate. It was deathly silent. Jianshan frowned slightly as he looked at the miniature world of the Tower of Radiance. Ever since he entered the Tower of Radiance, he felt pressured. He actually felt like his life was no longer under his control. Moreover, he could sense that the gray mist in his surroundings was actually seeping into his body strand by strand. He could sense a heavy presence of death from the gray mist. The gray mist is the resentment of the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance. Once too much of the resentment invades your body, it will cause severe damage and even affect your mind. As a result, you can't stay here for too long. Once you can't last any longer, you have to retreat, Jianshan said with a solemn expression. Donglin Yanxue looked back at Jianshan and explained in detail to Jianshan, physical injuries are nothing to our Radiant Saint Hall. No matter how severe they can recover in the shortest amount of time. However, once the resentment seeps into your soul and affects your mind, it'll be far too severe. This is because injuries to the soul are extremely troublesome even to our Radiant Saint Hall. Jianshan nodded, indicating that he understood, and said, Then where are the cultivation methods and secret techniques left by the seniors? Many ancient imprints hover in this space. Every single ancient imprint was left behind by past experts of our Radiant Saint Hall. Every single ancient imprint represents a cultivation method, a divine technique, or the cultivation notes left behind by past seniors. However, obtaining these ancient imprints has nothing to do with strength. Instead, it completely depends on one's talent and luck. Donglin Yanxue stared at Jianshan and explained in detail, Close your eyes, open your heart, and use your heart to respond. Once you are lucky enough, the ancient seals floating here will automatically find you and transmit the contents recorded within to you. Jianshan immediately tried using Donglin Yanxue's method. He was suppressed by the remnant consciousness of the artifact spirit in the Tower of Radiance, as well as the influence of the Tower of Radiance itself. So both the senses of his soul and the senses of his senses had been weakened to the lowest point. They were no longer of much use. As a result, he could only follow Donglin Yanxue's method. Jianshan was no ordinary person. The fact that he could comprehend the laws of the hallowed with a one-colored soul core demonstrated just how great his talent was. He had completely surpassed Donglin Yanxue long ago. As a result, when he opened his heart and called with his heart, he sensed the existence of the three ancient imprints very soon. Of course, this was not because of his senses. Instead, the mental connection between the three ancient imprints was responding to him, actively contacting him. It was exactly because of this that Jianshan could sense the existence of the three ancient imprints accurately. The three ancient imprints flew through the space aimlessly at terrifying speeds in Jianshan's senses. They would be in the sky at times and underground at other times. They would appear 10,000 kilometers away in a flash, as if they could pierce through space. Even if Jianshan erupted with his full strength, he would not necessarily be able to catch up to them. Seeing how Jianshan had already begun calling for the ancient imprints, determination suddenly appeared in Donglin Yanxue's eyes. She waved her hand at the 8 protectors behind her and said secretly, You guys go first. You guys go ahead, don't worry about me. Your Highness, our responsibilities, a divine king said hesitantly. But before he could finish, he was interrupted by Donglin Yanxue. Don't worry. I won't come across any danger here for the time being. Chang Yang, on the other hand, only has a one-colored soul core, so he won't be able to stay here for long. Once he can't last any longer, I'll send him out, and I'll come find you. Hearing this, the 8 guardians looked at each other, hesitated for a moment, and then left together. The Tower of Radiance was also a sacred land that hid great fortuitous encounters to them. It could even allow them to change their fates and become successful. They did not want to waste even a single second here. They urgently sought out their own fortuitous encounters. Strange. Why is Her Highness so concerned about Chang Yang? After all, Chang Yang is still Her Highness protector in name. Yet it's Her Highness who's protecting him now. To think that you've lived for so long. Can't you tell? The chosen saint has clearly developed feelings for Chang Yang. How is that possible? Changyang only has a one-colored soul core. Apart from Vice Leader Xianzhan's support, I really can't find anything good about him. There are countless people who pursue Her Highness in the Radiant Saint Hall. They're all geniuses, far more than Changyang can compare to. How is it possible for Her Highness to fall in love with him? I find it unbelievable as well. According to my understanding of Her Highness, she wasn't like this in the past. However, ever since she emerged from the world of Moon and Star, she seemed to have become a completely different person. The 8 protectors had already left. Donglin Yin Shui stared at Jinshin's ordinary face with her eyes wide open. She seemed to remember everything she had gone through with Jinshin in the world of Moon and Star. Her gaze gradually became gentle. 3 black-robed elders sat in a majestic hall in the disciplinary hall of the Radiant Saint Hall. They were all stern. We've completed the preliminary investigation of the world of Moon and Star. The only thing I don't understand is how Changyang and Donglin Yin Shui managed to escape alive after meeting Aoyama. That's rather unbelievable. I've also checked the scene. Although there are traces of battle between vicious beasts, it's still not enough for Changyang and Donglin Yin Shui to escape from Aoyama. It's just that Changyang is Vice Leader Xianzhan's subordinate. We'll have our hands tied when it comes to Changyang. We can't use any special methods at all. If we end up offending Vice Leader Xianzhan, we'll lose more than we gain. The 3 elders of the Law Enforcement Hall all sighed. They seem to be in a difficult position. Chapter 2391. Within the Sacred Hall, Vice Leader Xianzhan walked out of his residence in simple white robes with his hands behind his back. A heavy pressure radiated from him. Opposite Vice Leader Xianzhan was a black-robed elder from the Sacred Hall. He had already broken through to the 7-colored soul core and condensed a soul tree. He bowed slightly as he reported the situation. The elder happened to be one of the upper echelon of the disciplinary hall. Are you saying that Changyang is hiding some unknown secret? Or is there something wrong with Changyang? A gleam of light immediately flashed through Xianzhan's eyes when he heard the elder's report. I wouldn't dare to be so presumptuous. I just feel that it's a little unreasonable for Changyang and Her Highness to be able to escape from Aoyama. This is because the 2 of them have already encountered Aoyama. Even if a powerful, vicious beast had appeared along the way and kept Aoyama busy, Aoyama would have been able to catch up to the 2 of them with his strength after killing the vicious beast. Even the Divine King of Light would not have been able to escape from Aoyama's pursuit, let alone Changyang and Her Highness, who are much slower than the Divine King of Light. Just from this alone, it's impossible for Changyang and Her Highness to escape from Aoyama, unless Aoyama purposefully spared them. Although 3 other Divine Kings of Light have survived, they have not encountered Aoyama. As a result, it can be understood that even Aoyama is unable to find where they are hiding. It's completely different from Changyang and Her Highness' situation. The elder reported everything he knew to Vice Leader Xianzhan. Afterwards, he carefully glanced at Vice Leader Xianzhan's face. After a moment of hesitation, he continued, "Aside from that, I also have a feeling that." The elder hesitated as if he was worried. He did not know whether he should say it or not. "Speak." Vice Leader Xianzhan called out. His expression remained the same. The elder of the Law Enforcement Hall thought for a while and said softly, "This subordinate has carefully observed the scene. Based on this subordinate's many years of experience, I have a feeling that that place seemed to have been deliberately set up by someone, as if to hide something. Of course, this is only my intuition. I haven't gathered any useful evidence yet." "Have you tried turning back time and peeking into the past?" asked Vice Leader Xianzhan. The space in the world of Moon and Star was rather fragile. It was only enough for infinite primes to enter. Experts like the 8 vice leaders were unable to enter at all. As a result, they could only go through the elders if they wanted to learn about the situation there. We've asked subjects to try turning back time, but the several dozen places where Aoyama took action in the world of Moon and Star have all been disrupted by Aoyama. He's interfered with the laws, so turning back time is useless. And there's something else. I've just learned that out of all the disciples below Divine King, only Changyang has yet to undergo a blood test. Even Her Highness has obtained a blood medallion after recovering from her wounds. the elder said carefully. Vice Leader Xian Zhan's eyes narrowed. After a moment of thought, he waved his hand and said, "You are dismissed for now. Don't divulge the information you know for now unless the leader asks you personally." Yes, this lowly one understands. Then this lowly one will take his leave. The temple elder of the law enforcement hall respectfully retreated. Xian Zhan was the most respected out of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall because he had already reached the peak of his cultivation level. No one knew when he would break through and reach the next level. Now that Vice Leader Xian Zhan had personally spoken, the elder dared not tell the other 7 vice leaders what he knew no matter what. After the disciplinary hall elder left, Xian Zhan was the only one left in the spacious bedchambers. He stood there proudly with his hand on his arm. With a flip of his hand, the jade bottle that contained a droplet of Xian Ming's blood that he had obtained from Jianshin and the jade slip that Xian Ming had left behind with a message from Xian Ming appeared. Xian Zhan's gaze deepened as he looked at the 2 items in his hand. The 9 Clouds Plain was one of the 49 great plains of the Saints' world. Although its status was nowhere near as great as the famed 7 Sacred Plains, the 9 Clouds Plain still ranked towards the top on the remaining 42 Great Plains and 81 Great Planets. This was because there was an extremely powerful clan on the 9 Clouds Plain, the Heaven-Splitting Clan. The Heaven-Splitting Clan was a peak clan that had truly risen to prominence in the past 3 million years. It had already spread throughout the Saints' world. All of this was because the Heaven-Splitting Clan possessed a supreme expert only second to Grand Exalts. He was the Heaven-Splitting Ancestor, one of the few peak experts in the Saints' world. He stood on the same level as the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, EXN. He was extremely close to the heavenly ways and was only a step away from becoming a Grand Exalt. At this moment, a completely blue divine hall stood silently within the Heaven-Splitting Clan. It gave off a faint pressure. Very few people in the Saint world did not know about this divine hall, because it was the Azure Poseidon Palace that had caused an uproar in the Saints' world several years ago, where more than half of the Supreme Divine King had died. At this moment, the new master of the Azure Poseidon Palace, Xiao Man, sat across from a young man who seemed to be in his 30s with Ziyun. The young man's appearance was nothing special, but his eyes were special. They would shine at times, as if they could see through the heavenly secrets and the wondrous ability to see through all the mysteries of the world. At other times, they would become extremely profound, as if they contained a vast galaxy. As the galaxy revolved, they seemed to be able to devour a person's soul. Although he did not give off the slightest bit of aura, and other than his eye-catching eyes, he appeared to be extremely ordinary. Xiao Man and Ziyun, who sat across from him, appeared to be extremely cautious. They seemed to be extremely afraid of this young man. Even though they were in the Azure Poseidon Palace, Xiao Man's territory, they still did not feel safe at all. You can think about my suggestion carefully. Although the Azure Poseidon Palace is of great quality and extremely powerful, it's not invincible. If you leave here, even more experts will target you, and it'll be very difficult for you to have peace. Only I can protect you, so that those people won't dare to have any thoughts about the Azure Poseidon Palace, said the young man. His voice was very gentle, like a spring breeze. After saying this, the young man's figure quietly disappeared. He's already left the Azure Poseidon Palace. After the young man left, a short old man appeared before Lil Man. He looked at the spot where the young man had been sitting and felt a sense of powerlessness. Artifact Spirit. The Azure Poseidon Palace is a high-quality god artifact. It possesses unbelievable power. Can you really not do anything to that person with the power of the Azure Poseidon Palace? Xiao Man asked. Chapter 2392. The short old man shook his head bitterly. He's the heaven-splitting ancestor. He was at the same level of cultivation as the old master. Even if the blue Poseidon Palace unleashed its full power, it wouldn't be able to stop the heaven-splitting ancestor. Moreover, you know what happened back then? The Neptunian Divine Palace hurtled through outer space, avoiding the peak experts. It was extremely far away from the 9 Clouds Plain where the heaven-splitting clan resides, Yet the heaven-splitting ancestor did not even leave the Nine Clouds plain. Instead, he brought the Neptunian divine palace over from such a great distance. In the hands of someone like that, the Poseidon palace really is no different from a toy. Are we really going to give him all the pernite, or, although what he's offering is very valuable, the pernite, or is still something our ancestor left behind? Shao Man was reluctant. The short old man sighed gently. Actually, compared to those annoying fellows who chased us before, the heaven-splitting ancestor is already pretty good. After all, with his strength, if he really wanted to take the pernite or from us, we wouldn't have been able to stop him at all. However, not only did he not take it by force, he even offered great conditions in exchange. Of course, the little master has already inherited the Poseidon palace and obtained the things the old master left behind. Perhaps the little master doesn't care about the things the heaven-splitting ancestor gave her, but the heaven-splitting ancestor's protection is completely different. The protection of an expert like the heaven-splitting ancestor is something that can't be bought no matter how many cultivation resources you have. That's what's truly valuable. Once the little master obtains the protection of the heaven-splitting ancestor, you won't have to worry about being harassed at all. Shao Man fell silent. Although she had obtained the Poseidon Palace and become the new master of the Poseidon Palace, she had not had it easy in the past few years because she was just too weak. As a result, many experts coveted her, and they all began to find her, using both hard and soft tactics in an attempt to control her. Controlling her was equivalent to controlling the Poseidon Palace. However, when some experts discovered that soft tactics did not work, they began to use hard tactics. Therefore, she had not had an easy time during this period of time. It could be said that she was constantly being harassed. Just as the heaven-splitting ancestor had said, the Blue Poseidon Palace was a high-quality god artifact, but it was not invincible. Once its energy ran out and the formation failed, its defenses would plummet. Before the Azure Poseidon Palace accepted a master, the countless experts of the Saints' world did not dare to set their sights on it because of a single sentence from the blood-tier Grand Exalt. However, the Azure Poseidon Palace had already accepted a master. To the peak experts, this was a way to avoid the blood-tier Grand Exalt's decree and obtain the Azure Poseidon Palace. This was because the blood-tier Grand Exalt only told everyone not to snatch the Azure Poseidon Palace. He did not say that they could not rope in the master of the Azure Poseidon Palace. Therefore, in the eyes of many top experts, they felt that whoever could rope in Lil Man would be able to obtain the Azure Poseidon Palace. Roping in was naturally a form of control as well. Shao Man, we sisters are only where we are today because of Jian Chen's assistance. However, countless experts have trapped Jian Chen on the desolate plain for the sake of the Inata Tower. We have to find a way to help him, said Jian Chen. We have to help him, Ziyun said from beside Lil Man at this moment. As soon as she thought about Jian Chen's current predicament, she struggled to calm down. Lil Man's eyes immediately lit up. She said firmly, Sister Ziyun is right. If it weren't for Brother Jian Chen's assistance, I probably would have died in the Azure Poseidon Palace long ago, let alone the fact that I would not have been able to retrieve my ancestor's legacy. I have to help Brother Jian Chen now that he's in trouble. I've already made up my mind. I can give all the pernite or on the 8th floor of the Azure Poseidon Palace to Senior Heaven-Splitting Ancestor, but Senior Heaven-Splitting Ancestor must ensure Brother Jian Chen's safety. At the same time, the young man who had appeared in the Azure Poseidon Palace hovered in the air where the Heaven-Splitting Ancestor cultivated in a forbidden grounds of the Heaven-Splitting clan. He held a thumb-sized black bead in his hand. The ordinary-looking young man, who seemed to be in his 30s, was the heaven-splitting ancestor who was renowned throughout the Saints' world. The heaven-splitting ancestor looked at the black bead in his hand as undisguised desire and excitement filled his eyes. It was very difficult to imagine just what could tempt the heaven-splitting ancestor so much with his supreme cultivation. I never thought that the soul bead condensed from a fragment of the Grand Exalt of Ancient Path's soul would actually hide such a shocking secret. A terrifying item that doesn't belong to this epoch actually possesses such terrifying power. Once it's refined, even Grand Exalts fear it. The Pernight ore in the Azure Poseidon Palace was actually left there by the experts of the Taoist sect of Neptunia under the orders of the Grand Exalt of Ancient Paths. Since I learned from the Grand Exalt of Ancient Paths' hazy memories that the Pernight ore is one of the materials necessary to refine that item, I have to obtain the Pernight ore in Grand Exalt of Ancient Paths. Since you failed to refine that item, and I was fortunate enough to obtain a soul bead condensed from a fragment of your soul, as well as learn the secrets of that item, I'll complete what you failed to do for you. The heaven-splitting ancestor murmured. He stroked the bead lovingly, as if he had obtained a supreme treasure. At this moment, the heaven-splitting ancestor's face changed, and he said, "The new master of the Azure Poseidon Palace has agreed to exchange the Pernight Oregon. Very good. Protect a kid called Jinshin. It's a piece of cake. Men, what are your orders, ancestor?" An old man stood outside the room politely. He was the heaven-splitting ancestor's servant in the end. "Go to the desolate plain and bring me that person called Jinshin," ordered the heaven-splitting ancestor. "Do you want the Inata Tower, ancestor?" The servant was surprised. The Inata Tower? A smear of disdain appeared on the heaven-splitting ancestor's face. He said, "If the Inata Tower was in good condition, I would be slightly interested, but it's damaged now, and it's been sealed by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. The price to repair it is just too great. It's not worth becoming enemies with the Xin for a damaged Inata Tower. You only need Jinshin this time. As for the Inata Tower, let the brats on the desolate plain fight for it." "Yes, I understand." In the majestic war god hall on the Godnigma plain, the armored Taita slowly made his way out of a secret room in seclusion. The presence he gave off was so powerful that it had reached the primordial realm. Now, Taita had become an infinite prime. "Welcome back, war god." Outside the secret room, 3 old men silently appeared and bowed to Taita. The 3 old men were one of the 3 great elders of the God clan. Their authority was so great that they basically reigned supreme in the God clan. They were only second to the war god. "Is there any news of Jinshin?" Taita glanced past the 3 great elders and asked like a superior. He was filled with dignity. Chapter 2393. Your Majesty, Jinshin possesses the Inata Tower, which has already attracted the attention of many experts. Many organizations want to steal the Inata Tower from Jinshin and then hand it over to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing for benefits. Now, Jinshin has already been trapped on the desolate plain. However, his hiding methods are extraordinary. Many experts have searched the desolate plain for 3 or 4 years, but they still haven't found any traces of Jinshin, said a great elder. Although Jinshin was an insignificant figure, what had happened on the desolate plain recently was just too shocking. It had already spread through the Saints' world. So many peak experts were familiar with Jinshin's name. It said that the peak experts gathered on the desolate plain have already begun testing the blood of all the juniors below the Divine King realm. All the Divine King and Infinite Primes will be divined once in an attempt to find Jinshin through this method, said a second great elder. This child is indeed rather special. I tried divining his fate in the past as well. I tried to divine his fate, but in the end, I was unable to divine anything about him at all. If we continue searching like the people on the desolate plain, even if Jinshin is rather special, he'll be found sooner or later, said a third great elder. Taita snorted coldly, and his gaze became piercing. He said sternly, Jinshin is my sworn brother. I will never allow anyone to do anything detrimental to him. Immediately send experts to the desolate plain and warn everyone that anyone who harms my brother will become my enemy, no matter who they are. Yes, we'll get a hall elder to personally head to the desolate plain right away. The 3 great elders who reigned supreme in the God clan did not dare to disobey Taita's words. They all obeyed without any hesitation at all. This was because the war god was a supreme existence in the God clan. No matter how powerful or weak he was, as long as he spoke, it would be an imperial decree. It was truly unquestionable. As a result, even though Taita was only an infinite prime right now, as weak as an ant compared to the 3 great elders, he could directly order them around. Jianshun stood within the Tower of Radiance in the Radiant Saint Hall on the desolate plain with his eyes closed. He called with his heart, constantly deepening his connection with the three ancient imprints. The three ancient imprints moved through the Tower of Radiance like fish in water. They moved unbelievably fast, where it was impossible to catch up to them. As a result, the only method was to obtain the recognition of the ancient imprints so that they would approach him voluntarily. Finally, under Jianshun's efforts, one of the ancient imprints changed direction and headed towards Jianshun. With a few flashes, a fist-sized ball of light appeared between Jianshun's eyebrows. Strands of ancient consciousness appeared. The ancient imprint had already passed on all the information recorded within to Jianshun. The sword transformation technique. With a thought, Jianshun immediately knew that the ancient imprint recorded a radiant arte. However, only hallowed saint masters who had comprehended the laws of the hallowed could grasp this radiant arte. Jianshun could not help but become immersed in his comprehension of the sword transformation technique. At the same time, strands of the laws of the hallowed descended and revolved around him. As he comprehended, the power of the laws of the hallowed that revolved around him began to pulse with a special rhythm. It seemed to condense into the shape of a sword. Donglin Yanxue stood beside Jianshun and replied to him. The appearance of the laws of the hallowed immediately made her eyes widen. Her face was filled with shock as her heart churned. The laws of the hallowed. This is the laws of the hallowed. He has actually comprehended the laws of the hallowed with a one-colored soul core. How is this possible? Donglin Yanxue cried out inside. At that moment, she even struggled to believe her eyes. She struggled to believe that this was real. In the Radiant Saint Hall, most of the star geniuses could only comprehend the laws of the hallowed with four-colored soul cores. Only the star geniuses with 5 or more stars could comprehend the laws of the hallowed with 3-colored soul cores and become hallowed saint masters. Even a 9-star genius with extraordinary talent like her, as well as the 4 candidates participating in the trial this time, could only comprehend the laws of the hallowed with a 2-colored soul core. However, Changyang had actually become a hallowed saint master with a 1-colored soul core. It was not that there were no hallowed saint masters with 1-colored soul cores, but that was history from 1,000,000 years ago. This was more than enough to demonstrate just how rare hallowed saint masters with 1-colored soul cores were. Changyang is actually already a hallowed saint master, and it looks like he has comprehended the laws of the hallowed for quite some time already. A hallowed saint master with a 1-colored soul core could be directly promoted to chosen saint. There's no need for him to undergo any trials or challenges. Why didn't he do that and give the position of chosen saint to me instead? At that moment, Donglin Yanshue's heart was in a mess. She was at a loss. She deeply understood just how great of a status a hallowed saint master with a 1-colored soul core possessed in the Radiant Saint Hall. This was because it represented a supreme genius that had not appeared in the Radiant Saint Hall for 1,000,000 years. At this moment, the ancient imprint that Jianshun passed on the law vanished with a flash. Afterwards, the laws of the hallowed around Jianshun vanished. He slowly opened his eyes and saw Donglin Yanxue staring at him blankly with a single glance. This immediately stunned Jianshun slightly. However, he suddenly realized that he had used the laws of the hallowed involuntarily when the ancient imprint passed on the law to him. This was not something he could control. It was a completely subconscious action, so he could not hide it even if he wanted to. However, he had only exposed his talent as a radiant saint master, which was not a bad thing for him. Moreover, he was already prepared to leave the Radiant Saint Hall after leaving the Tower of Radiance. As a result, even if his talent was exposed, the upper echelon of the Radiant Saint Hall would not have enough time to investigate his origins. Why? You've actually become a hallowed saint master a long time ago. Then why have you always been hiding it? Do you know that if the upper echelon of the Sacred Hall discovered your talent, you would directly become the chosen saint? Donglin Yanxue looked at Jianshun with mixed feelings. I have no interest in the position of chosen saint, and I don't plan on staying in the Radiant Saint Hall for long. Jianshun suddenly became stern. He said, Donglin Yin Shui, I hope you can keep this a secret. I don't want too many people to know that I've become a hallowed Saint Master. Why? You want to leave the Radiant Saint Hall? Donglin Yin Shui stared at Jianshun blankly. For some reason, she actually became flustered when she heard that Jianshun wanted to leave the Sacred Hall.